next, I'm going to take, I think that's Ouss. I'm not sure how to pronounce it because it's spelled in English. I'm going to take you in a few seconds. I've seen you around my channel a bit, so I'm sure there's a lot of things that you want to talk about. We're going to try to start from talking about the topic of today, and then we'll see if we have enough time for the other topics as well. So I'm adding you in 3 seconds. 3, 2, 1. Hey, how's it
Can
going?
you
So
hear
how do
me?
you pronounce your name?
Actually, it's Ouss. It's just
Ouss.
Ouss.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. It's not English actually. It's a French word.
Okay.
How are you doing?
Not too bad yourself.
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Yeah, as you said, actually, we chatted quite a few times before. So, but it's first time we meet face to face. So, kind of, I'm using the Apostate Aladdin mask, as you can see.
I can't take credit for that. No, no. Infidel Noodle started it
Yeah,
first, but
you and COVID, I guess. Oh, okay. I
yeah.
don't know this person.
And COVID, yeah.
Um, yeah, and COVID. So yeah, actually, I'm very happy to talk to you, my friend. I've
Likewise.
watched quite a few of your videos. First time that I actually interact with someone that kind of introduces himself as an apostate. So that's very
Okay.
interesting for me. I mean, I
Like
hope
even
I've learned
in
quite a
real
few.
life
So
or
well,
never met one?
maybe once or twice, but it's not very common. To start with, we don't speak about faith so much where I live, and yeah, so it's not something that really came about. I've learned about the whole new atheist movement just a couple of years ago when I started reading Richard Dawkins' book or a few other kind of mainstream leaders of that movement, but I never looked into the actual ex-Muslim movement. So that is something that is quite new to me, very interesting.
You know what?
Um,
Believe it or not,
yeah,
I haven't read any of those books about the atheism movement at all. So you know more about that than me.
they're interesting. To
Yeah.
be honest, I mean, I think I would say this is my opinion. For a Muslim or a believer that doesn't have a solid grounding in his faith or a solid philosophical view of it, it might be disturbing. But to me, because when I read them, I had already gone through quite a massive, let's say, evolution of my own thinking of the faith. It wasn't such a problem. Most of the points that they try to bring forth, I had already thought of myself and I already had found the answers before. So it was just very entertaining and very interesting for me to see that these kind of brains that are very different from mine actually ended up with the same questions as mine, and their answers, nevertheless, were very different from mine. So that was very interesting. But to get to the subject that you brought today, so uh, to introduce it, I would say that for me, why do I believe? I would say that depending on
Sorry,
when you asked me,
before we
I,
get that 1 second.
yeah,
So how
yeah,
would you
go ahead.
identify, what's your label as a Muslim? Would you call yourself a Sunni Muslim or?
Yes, yes, I'm definitely
Okay.
a Sunni Muslim. I'm very traditional, actually. To give you a bit more of a background, I'm French, if that's not obvious in my accent, of Moroccan descent. Morocco is mainly made of Sunni Muslims, so I grew up in a Sunni household, so that's kind of where I was brought up. But now, growing up in a country that wasn't Muslim, for me, it was not obvious at all that Islam was going to stick with me, throughout my life. So
So
when I
you
was
grew up in France?
yeah, I was born and I grew up in Paris.
Okay.
So yeah, yeah, Morocco is kind of my distant past, but never. I've been there a few times, but that's not the country that I identify with the most because I was a child of the Republic, as we say here. Um, so yeah, so the point being that Islam was kind of something that was given to me when I was young, but I had to make mine as I grew old because again everything around me was not Muslim. Basically, everything around me was questioning my faith. So I had to know where it stood, if it was actual fact, if it was weak, if it was strong, what arguments could uh, make it hold or make it drop. And so that's why actually I found you very interesting. Because again, I've seen quite a few channels of other people recently because I started to get interested in this. And your channel has actually caught my eye because most of the arguments that you are bringing forth, that's kind of me about 15 years ago. So I found it very interesting because I went through the same thought process, it seems, as you did. I wouldn't say that I did it as well as you, but I'd say
Well,
that
yeah,
I've
I
been.
have a couple of questions
Mm.
before we go forward.
Yeah, yeah, sure, sure.
Um, well, I wanted to ask, well, first I want to mention what I bring forth isn't really, I wouldn't like to call them arguments because I've said this before as a disclaimer. I don't think Islam has been proven, so I don't need to argue
to disprove
against
it.
it.
Yeah,
But yeah, I get your point. It's whatever contentions, questions,
issues,
flaws.
let's say. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And something else I wanted to ask: how old are you, if you don't mind me asking, or what range of?
I'm turning 38.
Okay, all right. Well, you don't look it, so
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
a compliment.
but that's faith. Faith keep you young. I'm kidding. So
Don't
yeah.
tell the beauty companies, yeah,
Yeah,
beauty product
I don't
company.
think that would match with their let's say mindset, anyways.
Yeah.
But so yeah, let's go to the point because that's I think that's very interesting. And to be honest, I hope that this is the first of a few exchanges I would like to have with you. I'm not in the whole YouTube space and so on. I'm just a I'm a regular Muslim.
Well, you could
I'm
just
not
be
into
a guest or something. Like you
yeah,
don't have
yeah,
to. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. So that's the interest to me. I mean, it's just to have
Mhm.
this kind of chats. But let's say I'll give you my view on why do I believe, and I'll say I'll give it to you in two, let's say, parts. There is a part that is very intellectual. Deeply, I'm more than anything else a rational, meaning that I need to be able to understand what I accept. I cannot just take it on blind faith. That is not something that I'm very at peace with. And good thing, that's not something that Islam is expecting from me, the way I understand it. So there's the intellectual side that is kind of made of two subparts. One is based on philosophy, if you want, and the other one is based on, let's say, more on the theology of Islam. And the other bit is very basic. It's just the spirituality side, meaning that I feel that it answers a deep call within me in the quest for purpose, the quest for understanding my place in the universe, understanding what is my goal, and so on. So I would say that the spiritual part is more personal in a sense. Everyone will be having a different journey on this side, but the one that is more, let's say, common and more easily accessible to everyone will have to be the intellectual one, or the rational one, or the, let's say, the more reasoned part of it.
Wait, I just want to clarify something. You said there's two components. One of them is the intellectual slash rational.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
second is you said that's
spiritual.
the spiritual. Well, where's
Yeah.
the teleology?
The teleology would be in the well, actually, it's in a bit of both. When it comes to the actual the philosophy, the all the concept around the theodicy. So the theodicy is the understanding of evil or good. All the bit about the dogma itself, the creed, all these things that are more intellectual. I would put them in the intellectual case, in the intellectual bracket, let's say. But when it comes to spiritual, I'm more talking about how it makes you feel inside, as in being at peace, knowing what is your place, what is your goal, what is your purpose, what are the let's say the element within you that are being made whole because of this belief, if you want. So that's why I separate them. But the theology, as you say, as you mentioned, you pointed it, it's right. It kind of fits a bit in both. But for me, it was mainly a rational discovery, let's say, because I had to question almost every bit that I encountered of the theology before being able to accept it. So, and when it comes now to the rational, because as I was saying, that's the thing that I think is the most interesting here. Um, I've been through quite a long process. I've read a lot of the philosophers that are the main ones here. So one of them is called Pascal. I don't know if you heard of him.
Mhm.
Spinoza, Nietzsche, Kant, Descartes, quite a few actually that I found very interesting that kind of nurtured my own thinking. And one thing that really amazed me was the convergence of ideas. So these people come from a different background than mine. They were mostly Christians, and I realized that a lot of the thoughts that they went through actually pushed them a bit away from Christianity and closer to Islam in terms of creed. So that's something that I found very interesting. The intellectual part also includes an element of science because in my view, it's an impossibility to imagine that the whole universe would come about without any kind of cause, the first cause or the necessary cause, or it has different names. But to me, the bottom line being that every other avenue of thought that I've investigated, I didn't find any kind of
Mhm.
a probability. It didn't hold water for me, even
Well,
on
I
in
have
terms
a
of
few
yeah
questions for you before
yeah, yeah, sure, sure.
we continue. So I've been writing stuff down as you're speaking because there's some stuff on my mind. Um, so you said Islam is doesn't expect you to not use your intellect, right? Like Islam expects you to think about it and is not asking you for. You didn't say these words, but I'm thinking, is Islam not asking you for blind faith?
Well, actually, that's the word that I used, but no, I wouldn't say so. I'd say that, there's a verse in the Quran that says, أَفَلَا يَتَدَبَّرُونَ الْقُرْآنَ, which means basically, wouldn't there reason the Quran, like the revelation, like the idea of thinking within the Quran is very ingrained. I think it's mentioned many, many times. um, uh, فسيروا في الأرض فانظروا كيف بدأ الخلق. So go around, like walk the earth and watch how creation began. A lot of components of the Quran actually call you to think.
Yeah,
Doesn't mean that.
I'm
Yeah, go
aware
ahead.
of the calls to think or like the
Ponder.
verses saying, do they not think about this? Do they not ponder? But I have a question. For example, I can't quote these off the top of my head, but I remember many instances of like blind faith being kind of it's a virtue, like it's congratulated. There's a few hadiths at least about how a good Muslim, like the word it actually uses, kind of like is should be led like cattle, is what the hadith said. uh, do
Okay.
you do you kind of how do you feel about hadiths in general, and also like are you sure that you don't think that Islam at all values blind faith?
I wouldn't say that Islam values blind faith. No, I would say that actually Islam values thinking about faith. And I'll
Mhm.
give you two reasons why. I'll answer first to your first question. When it comes to hadith, I'm a Sunni, so I do follow the hadith, but I don't know. I mean, I know a small part of it. I don't know if you know about
Mhm.
the Arba'in Nawawi, so the 40 hadith of Nawawi, which are kind of central. Now you have the Sahih Bukhari, Muslim, and so on. These are thousands of hadith, so most of them I wouldn't know, and most of them are not really relevant to the life I live today. So I'm not really bent into, discovering each and every single one of them. But each and every single one of them that I had to investigate because they were problematic, like issues that ex-Muslim would bring, or that I would discover for myself. Because as I said, I had a lot of questions even before YouTube, came around and started to bring some new questions, or like make them
Mhm.
more public wise, public wide. Um, so the first point. The second part is, again, I will quote you another verse, but one verse says, "Hatu burhanakum in kuntum sadiqin," which means bring your proofs if you are truthful. And this is a direct call to think. Actually, that's a direct call not to follow blind faith. And there is another thing that I will give you, which is
Wait,
to me.
one
Yeah,
second
go ahead.
before we get to that.
Yeah.
Um, so that's not how I understand "Hatu burhanakum in kuntum sadiqin." It just means bring your proof if you're yeah. So that's more about a challenge rather
Yes.
than yeah. So I there's a lot of presentation of things as proof in Islam that seem to be accepted by the Prophet or God as this is proof, but in today's world they're not really proof. So it sounds to me more like a continuation of that, or like here's our proof, where's yours,
Yeah,
rather
but
than
what it means is that at least it doesn't. I mean, what it means though is that proof is something that you'll have to analyze, right? And analyzing a proof will always require your mind to actually work to see if it's strong, if it's weak. And if you call to someone to say, if you say to someone, look, bring your proof and let's discuss them, it means that you're coming on a rational ground to actually discuss with them. It's not going to be, the conclusion of it cannot be blind faith. It has to be something where we analyze your element, you analyze mine, and we see
Mhm.
if which one holds water. I mean, it has to be part of the whole discourse. The simple idea, bring your proof and you know, let's compare them, let's discuss them, is already groundwork, is ground base, sorry, for a rational discussion. And again, it's not only this. In so many components of whether it's the Quran or the Hadith, the idea is that the Quran and Allah is challenging us to say, look, like bring what you have. If you have something that is truthful, we'll be able to see it. And if it's not, we'll be able to show it. And that's how I see it. I'll give you another element
I
that I
mean,
got to before.
I'm
Yeah, go
thinking
ahead.
about, for example, two verses come to mind. One of them is about the challenge, bring a verse like this if you're honest. Um, um, I can't remember the exact wording of it, but it's a challenge, to bring a verse like the Quran. Is
Yeah,
that really about? actually assessing the opposing verse and figuring out if it sounds like perfect
This
or not?
this particular one, I would say, is a bit more difficult for me to explain because I know that there are many understanding of what it means, like bring a verse like it, and you will not be able to, and so on. This
Mhm.
is something that is more difficult for me, at least, to explain at my level. Meaning that when the Quran has issued a challenge like this one, I don't know if it was meant as a literary challenge or as a meaning challenge or as kind of a riddle. I don't know exactly how it was brought about, and I don't have
Yeah.
all the knowledge. To be honest, I mean, as I was saying, not being like
Yeah, no, no, I
so
don't mean
much
to
worse.
grill you about it or anything. Like I'm glad that you said honestly you're not sure which one, but let me ask it this way. Do you think there's one specific thing that God meant with that and that there's an answer out there and that for example if you take a week or something you'll find that answer?
I'll okay, well, wait. I'll have to ask you to rephrase that
Sure.
sentence.
So you said you're not sure if it's an actual literal challenge or if it was some kind of like
Okay.
metaphorical demonstration
Okay,
or
so
something.
for this very one that you just cited, which is you will not be able to bring a verse like this one. Uh, this very example, that's the one that I'm saying. I don't really know exactly what is meant by that,
No, no.
but
What I'm saying is, you're not sure what is meant by it, but do you think with enough research and questioning, you will find that there's one answer that was meant by one meaning?
no, not necessarily, because again, the Quran also says that there are some verses that are clear and others that will not be so clear. And I cannot assure you that this particular verse will have to be one of the clear ones. So I
Okay.
wouldn't go as far as going there. But to be honest with you, I don't necessarily need to be able to go there because I have other elements within the Quran that are clearer, that makes it very obvious that thinking and having a rational approach to Islam is actually recommended by Islam. So that is not a problem at all.
Well,
To me, I
one more
mean,
thing before
yeah.
you move on, because I've been thinking about this verse, and someone did mention it, so I can't take credit for that. But it kind of goes against, or it may go against what you're saying. The verse from what was this Surah sorry, one second, Al-Ma'idah.
Mhm.
Verse 101, it says, يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا تسألوا عن أشياء قد تبدى لكم. So basically, it says, don't ask about things that shouldn't be important or that may make you not believe or something like that. What do you think about that concept compared
That's very
to,
interesting. That's
yeah?
very interesting. Look, and that's the beauty of it as well. So thank you for bringing this one up.
Mhm.
I'll give you my answer, which is that I know, and you know, and everyone in this chat knows that there are some things that are beyond our understanding. Sorry, the concept of infinity, for example, is something that no human will ever be able to understand. And if you try to grapple with the infinity concept and everything that might come with it, your brain is not going to be able to manage it. That we are so limited, and there is almost a call for being to be humble in a sense, not to not think, but just to be humble, to think, but see if you reach a limit, just know that you've reached your limit. Remember that we have five senses. We smell only a small fraction of all the scents that are around us. We don't see a lot of colors that we're not just able to see or to hear, so we are limited. Our brain is also very limited. So I would
Mhm.
say that everything that is within the confine of our thought process, we have to investigate, but we also have to acknowledge that sometimes some things might be out of it. And
But
I would say
here's the
that
thing,
this is,
though. I mean, I'm
yeah,
not saying we know everything, and there are things that we can't yet conceptualize, or maybe never. But
yeah,
at that point, then Islam claims to have the answer, but then maybe the answer is not like what makes us take Islam's answer at that point? Like,
yeah,
why do we
okay,
give Islam the
great
authority
question.
to pick that? This
uh,
is the limit,
and
and beyond that, I know.
I'll give you the answer that I found, which is very
Mhm.
logical, which is everything that is within my grasp, I can question. And if when I question it, it happens to be truth, then I accept it. And if there are other things that are beyond my grasp, meaning that, when we talk about infinity, when we talk about, oh, but why did God, I don't know, why did he create us in the first place, or what does he do outside of the universe? Like this kind of question, I know that they are by definition outside of my understanding because I have no tool whatsoever to even be able to grasp or to analyze this. So there is a wisdom. There is something that's a word that is not really used today, but I find very meaningful, which is you need to be able to know, to understand what you can actually know or work with, and you need to be able to identify what you cannot work with because it's just beyond you. And most, I would say, everything that I had to grasp with that is within my reach or within the reach of all the people that I've heard talking about Islam, whether for or against it, I'm fine with it. But there are meaning that I managed to make sense of it and still stay within the faith and actually strengthen my faith based on it. And I could speak about that for hours. And
Well,
there
I
are a few things that are
yeah.
beyond that are just, again, the why would God, like, what did God do before the universe was created, or
I know
is it
there are
God,
these
or
bigger
all those.
picture questions that will never know the answer to outside of the
Yeah,
answer that religion would
yeah,
offer.
but that's what I say when I say that. That's what I mean when I say that the Quran tells you, like with regard to the faith, with regard to the goal of Islam, the truthfulness of Islam, bring a proof and let's question them. But when it comes
But
to
has
things that are
Islam
just
brought
going to
proof
be,
for these bigger picture questions?
oh yeah, I mean, to me, I mean, again, that's
No,
the thing. That's
like for
the
example, you were talking about the concept of why did God create us, or before,
yeah.
like infinity. Does Islam bring answers to that that our mind can't conceptualize that are clearly true?
But
And if
that's
they
the
are
thing.
true,
If
like
if they
how
can't,
can we conceptualize it?
that's exactly my point. And that's actually the answer is your question. You will never be able to conceptualize them, whether true or not. The only thing that you will be able to question are things that are within your grasp, things that made you leave Islam, or that made other people, embrace Islam or leave Islam. I mean, these are things that I'm ready to discuss because I know that they're within my grasp. And to be honest, there are so many that it's no problem at all for me to go through each and every single one of them that at least I've encountered in my life. A lot of them I never ask myself, I guess. But almost all the questions that I've heard, uh, you know, whether it's atheists or ex-Muslims or even current Muslim grappling with, sorry, I'm I found answers that actually made sense to me. And as I was telling you, I've come really from a more rational approach to understanding the
Mhm.
faith more than anything else. And rationally, it made sense, which is quite huge if you want my opinion.
Well, there's
Uh,
I have so many questions that are not relevant to this stream, so I'm sure you're gonna come back, and I'm sure we're gonna talk about specifics.
with pleasure.
But there's something you said at the beginning, like one of the first sentences you said that I knew we're gonna come back to. So you said something, and correct me if I'm misquoting, but you said something like when you read the books about this new atheism movement, and you were saying if someone doesn't have a solid philosophical basis for their belief, this kind of questioning could shake their faith or could make them lose their belief. And this brings me to a thought that I've been having this whole time, and I'm sure a lot of people in the comments. You seem like you spent a lot of time and effort into philosophy, right? Into trying to understand how the world works for yourself, and you arrived at answers in religion. Do you think that everyone in the world, or most people in the world, have time or mental capacity, even, or intelligence, or the luxury of thinking about things philosophically and having that solid basis?
I would say that it depends on what people around the world prioritize, right? I'd
No,
say
you
that
think it's a priority, like a conscious priority?
okay, I give you the answer in two parts. I would say that the deepest question within us is why. Why are we here? I think that's the main thing that separates us from, animals. Uh, that's my opinion. And to be honest, if you read the book of Yuval Harari, which is a famous atheist, you will see that that's something that
Which
is
book? The
also
Sapiens?
say no the brief history of mankind. I think I don't know
Yeah, I
what's
think
the
that's the
name
same one.
in English.
Sapien. Yeah, Brief History of
That's
Humankind.
Yeah, that's the follow-up. But sorry, I read them in French. But my point being that I deeply think that that's the deepest question within us. That is such a deep question we cannot ignore it. Now, so
But
that's
that's your perspective as someone like, and I relate to that. But I'm saying a lot of people, even people in the comments, it just didn't cross their mind that way growing up.
I wouldn't say that we have to have it in our mind like every day. Like I wake up like why am I here? I would say that it's a question that it's a dotted question within our life. The why is a very deep question, and to be honest, most of the philosophers that you have through history, whether atheists or believers, they will have to grasp this question at some point because the why
Yeah, but those are
answers.
the philosophers.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
not. What I'm trying to ask is, you mentioned that people, if they don't have a solid philosophical basis for belief, like you do, questions like these could or will shake their faith.
Okay, okay, understood
Questions,
your point. Sorry, okay,
yeah.
I just got
No,
your
no.
point.
What I'm
Okay,
trying to ask is,
yeah,
what
yeah.
you think? Do you think people everywhere like come with that solid, or do you think everyone will come to that solid philosophical basis by choice? Like, do they have a choice in it? What's the fate of those who cannot have the solid philosophical basis,
Okay,
either
bringing.
because they couldn't, they never thought to try, or their mind just doesn't work that way, or they did and they arrived at different answers?
But that's the thing, Aladdin. I think that you, it's a bit insane. I don't mean to be too direct when I say that, but
Mhm.
I
Feel free.
when I listen to you, I feel that we have a similar mind in a sense because
Hmm.
I saw that you actually questioned yourself. I promise you, the same way I questioned myself years and years ago, which is very interesting to me because that is not so often that I find something like that. But what I will tell you is two things. First, uh, no one we are all very different and from different like way of life, walk of life, and some of us will ask questions that are about the deep meaning. Others will be more like focused on the daily survival and so on. What Islam tells us is that each and every single one of us will have challenge of their own. I have been challenged with, a crisis of faith 15 years ago. Some will never have this challenge and therefore will never have to ask themselves. They will be born within the Islam faith and they will accept it. And if I'm honest, my family come from, the mountains in Morocco. Most of them didn't read. Most of them never had to go through, like an identity crisis being in a surroundings that are not Muslims. So I had to go through things that other people didn't have to go through, and therefore I had to bring answers to questions that other people didn't have to ask, and that's fine. I would say that every single one of us will have a different path, but that doesn't matter actually, because what Islam tells you is that with regard to your faith or to your belief or non-belief, God will judge us exactly on our own personal individual journey, not a standard that is beyond. So if you never open the book, or if you never ask yourself about God, or if you never met a Muslim, or all of this will be taken into account into whatever faith will be awaiting for you on the other side. That's what
Well,
Islam tells you actually.
I always hear about that, that God's judgment is going to be fair and it's going to take into account all the factors. But at the end of
Yeah,
the day, do you think one of the factors is belief in Islam specifically? Like, considering someone did be exposed to Islam and Muslims and in the right way, not just, the bad image and everything. I'm not talking about the cases that've never heard of Islam.
yeah. Okay, let me give you my. That's a very interesting question, and I hope that we'll have an opportunity to chat actually about it, because I had an
Mhm.
answer. I have an answer, and it made perfect sense. So I would like to know, like, what do you think, or what your audience think about that? With the Quran makes you a promise. It says that on the day of judgment, no one will be wronged. No one will be actually, in a sense, complaining that this is unfair. And that is such a deep sentence. If that's the promise that Islam gives you, then that answers your question. Meaning that if you never heard of Islam, or if you heard of it, in a very bad light, like, oh,
No, no,
just about
that wasn't exactly my question. I'm saying if you've
uh,
heard of it in a good light, like even walked into the mosque with your friend
yeah,
and you
yeah.
wanted to convert, but you don't have that philosophical basis, it's just not
Okay,
working for
I'll
you.
come to this. Yeah, I'll come to
Yeah.
this. It's fine.
Hmm.
The answer is very simple. God, God tells you that He's closer to you than your own, jugular vein, right? He knows each and every single one of your thoughts. If what you're saying is the person really never saw the light, the truth in Islam, and God, He knows that better than the person himself, then God will judge him based on the fact that he never rejected Islam. He just never saw it. But that's the thing. The thing is it true that the person never saw the truth, or did he saw some glimmer of truth but didn't just want to accept it, which is,
Oh,
I
that's
guess.
okay. Here, I need to pick your brains about this one.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. I
that's
know that you are going to come
yeah.
to that. Yeah.
So that's the definition of a kafir, right? Like someone who knows the truth but rejects it, right? Or that is, as far as I understand, the definition of a kafir. So do you actually think that someone, like, say myself, for example, do you
Mhm.
think I've seen the glimmer of the truth and I don't want to accept it?
Look, again, I'll give you the answer that Islam gives, as far as I know.
Is that like your
Maybe
answer
you
as
will
well?
be, look, yeah, yeah, that's my answer too, actually,
Okay.
because it makes perfect sense. You might be the one going to paradise, I might be the one going to hell. No one knows but God. So I would never be able, as a human being, to say, "Oh, you, Aladdin, yeah, you're going to hell." And me, Usama, that is never going to be something that a Muslim can
No,
say.
but
Now,
I
if you
wonder
say to
why
the, if
Muslims
you,
always go to
if you,
that one though.
no,
Like
but
no one's asking you to make the judgment.
yeah, yeah, I know, but you giving your example. So I'm saying to you
Mhm.
personally, I would never be able to say so, to say that, oh, you in your case, yeah, you will go to. There's not something I can say now. If
But
I
who does it apply to then? Like a person who knows the truth and sees
to,
the
to
glimmer of the truth as you see it.
oh, okay, so you're talking about the actual archetype, right? So the archetype of someone, the unbeliever. What is the unbeliever? That's the question that you ask, basically.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so my answer is it's the one that saw truth in Islam, but just didn't like it. And I'll give you, because that's something that I understand can confuse you. But actually, if you think about it, there is something that you see around you all day long. I'll explain to you what I mean. In the history, in the hadith, in the Sirah, we know that most of the people that opposed the Prophet were the rich of Mecca. And most of the people who joined him at first were the poorest.
Wait, sorry, I have to stop you there because pointing to the story to make the point, like you've seen one of my
Okay,
videos.
okay,
Yeah, it
okay,
has to
let's
be
forget
from
about the
like
story.
something observable.
All right, okay, okay,
Yeah.
okay. So let's say every day around you, you see people that will take stances that go in their interest. Let's say even in our societies, when you have a if you look at the right side of the political scope, like the right side is usually the one that wants lower taxes. They believe that taxes are, like a burden on and so on. It's not fair and so on. That is their actual belief. They believe that taxes are not fair. They should lower them. And people on the left side that usually are a bit poorer, they think that the rich should pay more and so on. Each of these group, they are sincere in their thoughts, right? They really think what they say. And as it happens, each of this group actually thinks what is the most convenient to them. And the point that I want to get to is that the belief that you have is not actually just something that falls on you, and you have to live with. It's something actually you want to nourish because it serves you, because it's convenient to you. And it's the same thing with faith. We don't like to. I don't know if you. I don't know if I was
Mhm.
clear on that example. My point is actually
Well, you're saying that their truth or their belief about the truth or whatever they're convinced of, has to do with what serves them best.
That's exactly my point. Yes. Yes, that's exactly my point. That is how we think, actually. And you don't even have to. Let's go a bit further. Go to tribunals. Like tribunals, we say in English, right?
Like
The
a
judge
trial.
place,
Yeah, a
trials.
trial
Yeah, the place where you have the judge.
in a courtroom. Yeah,
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 courtroom. Thank you.
yeah,
Sorry. Uh,
yeah.
so you'll have opposite sides fighting. Each of them believing to the core that they are right. And as it happens, each of them is always fighting for its own interest. You will never see A fighting B because he wants B to win. Like A wants to win.
Well,
Okay,
I
that's
want to use your
two real
example.
examples.
No, I want to use your example. You said so. Okay, so about the best interest thing. So the truth or the way that you perceive the truth or what you will be convinced of has to do with what is in your best interest,
To
right?
some extent, yes, that's my point. Yeah.
So how does it serve someone to see the truth in Islam and not want to follow it? What best interest are they following if they
Okay,
know that like the consequence is eternal hell?
I wouldn't say that they know it in that way, but I would say that we are able. I think that you underestimate, you really, I think, underestimate the ability that we have to tell ourselves stories. And that works for believers and unbelievers. What I mean by that is that we don't necessarily realize, or we might try to keep ourselves oblivious to the consequences of some of our actions. We do that all the time. Like you see a red light and you run through it. You know that might mean death at that very point because it's a very dangerous thing to do, but you just have
Mhm.
this impulse. You don't want to stop and you just go, and
No,
that
I
is very
understand the
human.
concept. I'm painfully aware of it myself. Like sometimes, when you go to a second chocolate bar when you're not supposed to because you don't want to get
Exactly.
fat.
So we do have impulses, and
But
that's that's
here's the
that's the
thing,
point.
though.
Yeah.
When you come from your position or like the position of Islam in general, and you say, so a kafir is someone who, like, or an unbeliever, he sees that truth, but against his own, like,
Best
against
interest.
reality, against his own interest, he doesn't follow it because it's in his best interest at the moment or his selfish
Exactly.
interest, I suppose. But here's the thing.
But I wouldn't
Then
say that it's only this. I would say that it's part of this. But there is another
okay,
element that is very important, which is that we have within us this grain of arrogance,
wait, we'll
pride.
get to that point. But
All right.
for
Okay.
the
Okay.
first one, so after I've put it the way you've put it, um, man, I'm starting to lose the point here. So the problem with that is I understand the concept of itself of doing something against your own self-interest because of impulse, or even though you know it's wrong, but the immediate reward is better than the long-term reward. I understand
That you're
that
not even sure of. That you're not even sure
that
of
you're not
because
even sure of. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
but then the thing is, when Islam presents itself as the authority, it's kind of claiming on behalf of everyone. If you don't believe, like there could be other reasons that we're going to discuss right now, but if you don't believe, it's because you're lying to yourself. Like it's using that phenomenon that's whatever you want to call it. It's using that thing that happens in other cases to apply it to philosophical reasoning, to apply it to the afterlife, which I don't think applies that way.
But I don't think that's the point neither. I think that there is a distortion here in the argument because the unbelievers, they're very very identified people in the Quran or in the surah, like we have this, you kind of laugh at this joke, but the Namrud thing that we actually, I'd love to get an opportunity to talk about, the weakest argument that you mentioned, or
Mm.
Pharaoh, or Abu Lahab. Like these people are almost archetypes of what it means because they actually saw but they rejected. And you think that this is actually ridiculous, but I don't, and I think that's where you're mistaken. You're making two mistakes in my opinion. First, you're
Well,
making the mistake
I just
of
have to
think,
say, you
yeah,
don't find it ridiculous because you already believe the concept itself, which is, going against your own self-interest and so on, and seeing the truth in Islam but rejecting it. But it's
yeah, but
kind of
that's
feeding into itself.
no, but
Like
that's
you
because that's
believe it
something that
because
I've
of these characters.
experienced. No, but that's
Mhm.
the thing. I don't believe it because of it. I've witnessed it, and so have you. That's the thing. You just didn't recognize it. But the fact is
Well,
that
see,
you've
that's the
seen
thing.
around you.
Islam
Let me
gives you
just
the
finish.
authority to say that.
No, no, no. Let me no, because you agreed to it, like to the fact that you have impulses. Sometimes you act against your own interest because you have other impulses within you, or and if I was to go even further, I gave you the example of people on the right, like wanting to lower the taxes, being convinced that that's better, but in truth, it's because they want it. It's not the truth itself. It's what they want, and they make what they want become the truth, and that is
I don't
something
think
that.
that example is a good one either because I'm pretty sure they're smart enough to know that it's like purely because of selfish reasons. They know that. But I get the concept itself, but it doesn't apply to bigger picture things. And it bothers me sometimes. I'm not bothered by you, but it bothers me that Islam would kind of make that claim that yeah, it is that denial about other things, but you're applying it to the afterlife, to everything, and we've
No,
never
but
seen an example of that.
that's the thing. I think that, and that's the second point that I was making, which is that I think that there is distortion. That's where the distortion is. To me, we make the unbelievers population much bigger than it actually might be. We have no idea who is an unbeliever, meaning that I cannot say, and no Muslim will be able to say this disease is an unbeliever, or the unbeliever will be making X% of humanity. We don't actually know who has seen the truth and rejected it versus who has seen Islam but just didn't recognize it really honestly, deeply, profoundly,
Well,
sincerely as the truth.
I started only hearing it this more often. The whole like, okay, not every disbeliever is the kind of disbeliever
But
described in the Quran.
if you
But
allow me
have we
this,
met any of them except for these archetypes?
but I will respond to this. To be honest,
Mm.
I don't know, and no Muslim is supposed to ask himself this question because that is not for us to judge, and that is
But I
definitely
thought it was
something that's
about
very deep.
questioning everything.
Yeah, yeah, I know, but I mean individually. You said like, do you see more of these people? Like you asking me as a human, do I see a lot of actual unbelievers? And I would say that I've never wondered that. Meaning, have I seen people that knew Islam and rejected it? I wouldn't be able to answer this question, and I've never really asked myself this question because this is between each and every single one of us and God. Now,
But
the
how could you
point
not
that is,
ask yourself that question? I mean, I would want that concept demonstrated to me in a way that's bigger than, just a chocolate bar or a speeding, through a red light or something like that. How could you not, how does it not cross your
oh, okay,
mind?
okay. So in this case, I will give you my example
Mhm.
because my example, very personally, and that's something that, and we can go even further. To be honest, to me, it would be better if Islam wasn't the truth. I didn't want it to be the truth. And the first reason why I questioned it was because I wanted to be free. Let's be honest. I'll be honest. In a
Hmm.
sense, I wanted to be able to do whatever I want. To know, like, there's a sentence in French that says ni maître ni Dieu, which means no master, no God. And there is a kind of a will. There are two wills that conflict within us: a will to be free with no masters, and a will to actually have a kind of purpose that's guiding us, from beyond, from above, or from in front of us, in a sense. And I would say that these two things are kind of fighting each other. And I saw with myself that I was leaning. If I was to listen to my impulses, I would definitely try to see reasons not to stay a Muslim, to be like, oh, like, this is, like, I could reject that. Yeah, like, this is a
I'm biased
weakness,
the
maybe.
opposite of you. That's interesting. Like
Yeah, but
my bias was the opposite of yours. I wanted Islam to be the truth.
that's interesting, you see, because here we are now. I didn't want it, and when I first started to question Islam, I didn't start with the Islamic texts. I actually started, as I was telling you, from a philosophy that is, way outside of the Islamic,
And that's how I started as well. Yeah,
historicity.
yeah.
And after I started to go back to it. Now, that is not to say that I didn't have a grounding in Islam, because I grew up in a Sunni family, as I was saying. But when I was about 18 to 20 years old, I started to read, and I read until like, for years and years, about many subjects, just to have a better understanding. And that's where I started to see the convergences that I was mentioning earlier. But coming back to the subject that we mentioned, I would say that I don't know how wide the unbelievers population is. If it's 5 people, if it's a million, I wouldn't know. And to be honest, that is definitely not my place to even try to know that. But the archetype itself, and the impulses that might push someone away from Islam, even if he sees truth in it, I definitely understand it. I have no problem at all, and I mean, I can give my own, like, analysis on this. I
Well, I'm
can.
just very surprised because I mean, for me, okay, it all started with it wasn't specifics either, though I learned a lot of odd specifics. In my mind, it was always a deficiency on my part. It was like, okay, you don't understand it. That's God said there's a lot of things you won't understand, or when I grow older, maybe like I'll seek those questions again or the answers for those.
Hmm.
But I also started from a philosophical point of view before I even knew what philosophy meant. So that's not to say that I'm as well read on philosophy as you. I really don't think I am. But the questioning had to do with like predestination and free will
Yeah,
and
yeah.
the fairness of heaven and hell and things like that. But I
I,
wanted
I,
Islam to be the truth. I've never met someone who actually says I was questioning Islam because I wanted to do whatever I wanted. So you started from a point of belief and you were looking for an excuse not to follow the rules that you know are true.
No, I didn't know them to be true. I just grew up in them. So, when you grow in a family that is Muslim, you just take what is given to you, as like, that's how it
Mhm.
is. And what brought me to Islam is actually everything that I questioned outside, that brought me back inside, that made me question what's inside, and going back, like, I was almost going back and forth between any other type of references that I could use outside and Islam, to see, like, if it was
Mhm.
holding water. That's basically the process that I went through.
Well, I'm
Not with
interested
the
in the beginning of that process. You're saying so you were handed the rules, right, of religion, and you didn't
Mhm.
know if you believed in them. So you're saying you weren't believing when you were born, or
No,
like
no,
since
no,
birth?
no. I would say that, oh, because of the concept of fitra, I wouldn't say that I questioned Islam when I was young. But that's the thing is, when it comes to, like, making faith your own, you need to actually go through, at least, I mean, I had to. I wouldn't say that other
Mhm.
people have to, but I had to go through an intellectual process to make it mine.
No, I mean
Because
in the
again,
beginning.
yeah.
So you're saying fitra. Okay,
Oh,
everyone's
so you
born.
mean when I started to question it?
Yeah. So when you started questioning, it was because you didn't want the rules. You didn't want you
Yeah.
wanted Islam to be false because you wanted to be free from these rules, right? You didn't
Not
want
only
to
the
be.
rules, actually. Not only the rules, I would say, Aladdin. I would say that it was also because it felt very uh, uh, and almost outside of this world. Like, anything, nothing around me was calling me, like, was reminiscent of Islam. Everything around me was completely disconnected. whether my friends, my entourage, the
So you
media,
wanted to fit
everything.
better? Like that's
No,
why.
it's just that it felt a bit weird. Like, if you have this message that is given to you within your family or that you grew up with, and you look at what's surrounding you outside of your household, and it doesn't match, you just have to think like, but like which one makes more sense? And
No, no,
the
that
goal,
makes sense.
yeah.
But how did you? Because I'm trying to understand what you said
Okay.
about wanting Islam to be not true. That's
Oh,
your
okay, okay,
question.
sorry. Yeah,
Like, how did that difference? So you weren't sure which side, like which part makes sense, but how did that push you to want Islam to be false?
because it would be more convenient where I was, simply. It
So
was
was
it's
that like the source of your questioning? Is you wanted to fit in better? Like it was more
not only
convenient?
fit in, but just like fit in, not only fitting like as in being accepted, more like feeling like as in being aligned with the values that are around me, the way of life that is around me. It's not to fit like to be accepted, but more like to,
Yeah, it's
like,
not about people's
no,
perception,
no,
but
yeah,
more
it's not about
about
exactly.
your
Yeah, you got it.
day-to-day life being more
Exactly. Yeah,
simplified.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Like both of them match completely my life and my surroundings. Whereas, like, if I was to stick with Islam, then it would be like a bit weird, like this, like
There's
a
more
bit.
work to like upkeep your religion
Exactly.
while also living in that environment.
Exactly. And
Okay.
on the practical side, and on many, and again, there is another element, as you said, the rules, but it's not only about the rules in Islam, it's also about the idea that you belong to someone, right? And that is not something that, if you want to be like free from everything, like it was not someone actually, you belong to God. That's the vision of Islam, right? And there is an impulse that says, you know what, I want to do whatever I want to be whoever I want.
You
And
already
that
you already believed in God, but you wanted to find a reason not to be someone's or God's slave.
I wouldn't say that I already believed in God. That's the thing. I had to question it. That's the whole part was like, is Islam true? And to be honest, the whole philosophical idea of God and so on, I'd never had asked myself this before. So it's the whole philosophical journey that I went through that got me a deeper understanding of God, that brought me back to Islam, which made me understand that this deeper understanding was already within it. And actually, the concept of God within Islam was the most
Mhm,
pristine that I could find anywhere else. And from this, I kind of built, because I went from the very ground, as in, like, does it make sense for God to exist to start with? Then, if God exists, like, does it make sense that he, would reveal himself? And then, and I built layers after layers until I got to the point where actually there is nothing that I could find that would actually go against it. And that's the insane thing. That's why it's so interesting for me to speak with someone like you, because you went through a similar process apparently, but then all your conclusions are completely like
mhm,
like the other way around of mine. And when I looked, that's why I look at your videos actually, because I'm thinking like, what is this guy bringing that didn't think of maybe? And most of the videos that you brought, I already thought of them before. And a
mhm,
great example is the weakest God's weakest argument, the video that you titled like a couple of days
mhm,
ago. And this is something that I actually went through. I read that verse, and I'll give you something that is a bit personal. Ibrahim, alayhi salam, the prophet Ibrahim. I'm very interested in that personage, in this mythical, as you say, mythical figure, because I found what he did very incredibly smart. And you read the same story and found it completely ridiculous. So I find
mhm,
that amazing, because here we are, both of us talking, making sense. I hope you understand what I say and understand what you say, and yet the same story, when you read it, you find it make no sense. And I read it, I analyzed it, and it makes perfect sense. So that's interesting, you see. And I have to question like, why does it, so that's the thing that is interesting to me. But I can
mhm,
tell you for a fact that all my I mean, I hope so, all my thoughts were mine, as in I had to drill through them to see if they actually made sense before I could accept them. And it's kind of, I don't know, I understand you're a lot younger than I am, but it's not a
mhm,
question of age here, but it's more like when I was young, I had this much certainties when I was very young. Then when I went through my, let's call it crisis, my certainties grew, collapsed to that level. Then I had to build them up a bit more. And now they are smaller than they were when I was very young, but I would say that they're much more solid, because I had to question each and every single one of them. And to this day, every single piece of content that I read or every book that I go through, it just kind of comes to solidify things that I've already seen before. And I can give you so many examples, but I give you a list that is not
mhm.
non-exhaustive. But there's the
Well,
Theodicy side. Yeah, sorry,
I
go ahead.
have a few questions that I've been writing down. Um, so just to get it out of the way, you started off being biased against Islam, or you wanted you wanted to find a reason that Islam is not true because it would simplify your life. It would be
Yeah,
an easier life that way, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
So,
definitely.
do you think that was how does that relate to the philosophical questioning? Like, did that make you start questioning, and philosophical questioning was the first step?
Yeah, because
So it
I
didn't
knew
start
that
with the philosophical questioning first. It was the desire to find a
to
reason that
weaken.
Islam is not true.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That the first it wasn't necessarily to like prove that Islam wasn't true, but it would have been more convenient to me. So it was a very, let's say, uh, 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 merciless inquiry that I had to go through with regard to Islam, and that's what.
That's very interesting because yeah, our starts were very different. I mean, now that we
Yeah,
think
yeah.
about it, we are similar in many ways, but for me, it was actually complicating everything, and to like the questioning itself was complicating everything, and I wanted Islam to be true so I can go back to simplicity,
But
especially
I
that I
think,
grew up in
but
Saudi
I,
Arabia.
exactly, that's what I was going to say. That's because we grew up in very, very different neighborhood. I mean, in very different contexts. I mean, mine, to free myself from where I was, Islam was to be let go of, and for you to free yourself from where you are, you had to adopt Islam in a sense. If you want to fit more, like to fit better, just go with Islam. And for me, if I want to fit better, just go outside of Islam. And our thought process was maybe like trying to take the other way in a sense, try to go against the whatever trend was pushing us where we were.
Oh
And
no, no, for me it wasn't that way. No, it
okay.
was it initiated what initiated it was philosophical questioning, I suppose if you
Hmm.
want to call it that. It wasn't because of what everyone around me was doing. If anything, I was primed to believe even more.
Hmm.
So yeah, like I feel like I would have had the same questions way sooner if I was not raised in a Muslim community because I would have been exposed to these ideas even younger, and I would have asked the why questions even younger.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm surprised by that, but
Well, it's but to me, I mean, growing up in Paris, it was the question. When you're very young, I mean, I was just speak for myself. You don't really question philosophical aspects of Islam. It's like you just go
I
with the
did.
very mundane. When no, I didn't. To be honest, I
Mhm,
mean, I wasn't like smart enough or wise enough to think this kind of question when I was like 10 or 12, or at least I
mhm,
don't remember them. It's kind of a long time ago. I remember that when I really had to go through this and say to myself, look, like you need to make sense of things. Like either this is completely false, and you have to, just move away from it, in a nice way because you don't want to shock anyone, or you just like make sense of it. And that's almost something that I had to do to be true to myself. So
okay,
it was not a difficult process at all. I didn't have any pain. Actually, I was so happy that I went through it because it was so interesting. Again, I would never have read a lot of the authors that I went through or a lot of the thoughts that I had to like come up with if I didn't have this need. And at the end of the day, at the end of the journey. What it brought me back to is something much, much stronger than what I would have had if I had stayed purely on the traditional side, of the faith of Islam, and
mhm,
not making it my own with my own context. And so yeah, but it's a very deep thing. And
mhm.
if I was to yeah,
Well,
maybe.
here's there's a lot of questions in the comments that are very interesting that we definitely can't get to today. Like we want to get your thoughts on a lot of topics specifically. So I'll probably have to have a stream just specifically for you.
With
Um,
pleasure.
but what was I thinking about?
To be honest, man, I don't know how you do to actually speak to me and read the comments. I mean, I'm barely able to actually, like make this conversation make sense. So
I'm hoping I'm not missing anything you're saying. That's why I'm writing stuff down as well.
at least it doesn't seem that way at all. So if you're missing things, you're good at hiding it.
Thanks.
But
Well,
yeah,
here's something that I wanted to ask you. Two questions, and I want to move on to the next caller after that, just because they've been waiting as well.
yeah, yeah,
But
sure, sure.
uh, two questions, and I'm going to list them first, and then we'll talk about each one. One of them is the classic. So, if you had started somewhere else aside from Islam, do you think you would have arrived there? And the other one, this one I had earlier on when you were talking, and did you have a lot of rationalizations for example, when God said something with simplicity, or the author of the Quran says something simple, that would be a question like, do you not think? then you would extrapolate from that and you think God meant this is or the invitation to bring proof that's more about thinking and more about rationalization and philosophy. Do you think that these are all ad hoc rationalizations, basically? Like you're trying to make it make sense rather than extrapolating from the actual content itself? And because that is how people sound when they get into philosophy, because a lot of very simple things in the Quran are sort of, I don't want to say twisted, but like represented in that way to make sense today. But for generations, people understood them differently and died on on that belief. So I want to get your thoughts on that. So yeah, those two questions.
Okay, so very good questions.
Mhm.
Can you? But the thing is, I was so focused on the second one, I forgot the first one. So
Sure.
that's
Yeah.
that's how dumb I am. So
No, no, no.
I repeat.
It's not that I write them down or else I'm gonna forget. So the first one, which I don't remember, I'm gonna look again.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah, with regard.
if you had started somewhere else,
Yeah, yeah. So that's a
yeah.
very that's a I find that very strange question because if I had started somewhere else, then I would be someone else, right? But I'll tell you this for something that is the most important thing to me, which is again, thank God, I have a brain and I try to use it and to be as truthful as I can. The only thing that matters to me is the truth. Wherever it leads me, I will go. That's the main thing that actually guided me. Again, I was telling you I'm 38 now. For the last 20 years, that's how I have been for everything in my life. So I would hope that wherever I would have started, as long as I have this quest for truth, I would have ended up at Islam. And I would think that's the way. For example, I've read the Bible. A lot of Muslims haven't. A lot of Christians haven't. I've went through other beliefs just to try to understand how like their internal coherence, if they made sense, if they answered the deep questions that I had. And uh, I, I I have to I have to emphasize the fact that for all of them, I found Islam to make more sense to me. But I cannot deny the fact that maybe the fact that I was brought up in a Muslim family already kind of almost programmed my thinking. But I don't think that's the way because I've discussed with so many people that are not Muslims. Almost everyone around me is not a Muslim. And when we talk and we have an exchange on the pure rational elements, I find that, and most of them agree with me on a lot of the points that I bring.
Wait, I
What
gotta
I say
ask:
makes a
are
lot of
those
sense.
people religious and philosophical, or are they not?
I would say that they are definitely philosophical, as
Okay.
in they studied in the same place that I did, and they're fairly intellectual, and they're not deeply interested, in the whole meaning of life type of things. But when I bring them the element that I think about, there we have a good back and forth, and that pushes me to like go deeper in my thinking, and actually at the end of the conversation, what I end up with is yeah, it kind of solidifies it, and I would say again, I emphasize this. I'm really interested in truth. I'm not about, Islam for me has value only because it is the
Mhm.
truth to me,
Well, I
as
want
in
to
I,
rephrase it because okay, what you said was really good. You said you're interested in the truth, and you obviously believe that Islam is the ultimate truth. And
yeah,
if you honestly question it and think about it and search, you're gonna find it if you actually go down that journey, right?
yeah.
So,
I wouldn't say that like
mhm,
this is something for me, right? If I was to keep on this journey, of course, I mean, with my mind, I would have gone through like, oh, okay, so what does what does the Jewish religion says, what does the Christian religion say, what does atheism say, because I already went, I mean, when I tell you that I read through like Richard Dawkins, like Christopher Hitchens, all these people that I listened to 15 years ago, it was because I wanted to make sense of like what is their alternative, what are the alternatives that I have, and
mhm.
so I would like to say that wherever I would have started from, I would have gone through all these different stages, and I think that at the end I would have gotten to the same place. But I cannot prove it because I'm me.
Yeah. Well,
And
I
so
want to
yeah,
rephrase it that way because I'm curious to know what you think about this. So if that's the case, how come more people aren't going through this journey and converting? Is it because of dishonesty or um, or people who do go down on that journey, the number, like the percentage of them who would find Islam, even if they went down that kind of questioning, is not even close to the majority. So what does that say about the truthfulness of Islam or the objectivity of that truthfulness?
I w- that's a good question, and I, my limited answer. I would say that it's not by the number of people that I would judge something to be true or false. When I said that I went through, Christianity or Judaism and so on, it's because these are the different alternatives. If you go to the Hindu faith or the Buddhism, you know, each and every single one of them, I had a criteria that I had to look into. Does it make sense of the universe? Does it answer the purpose of life? This kind of thing. Is it internally coherent? Blah blah blah. So all of this that I went through, this is how I managed to make sense of what would be the truth to me. Now,
Mhm.
once I say that, I'm not saying that everyone that goes through the same question as me will get exactly to the same conclusion. I cannot say that, because for many reasons people might not turn to Islam at all. It's not only about the truth that's within it. There are so many layers that you have to remove
Mhm.
before you actually got to get to that.
Well,
um,
the reason why I care about numbers here is that let's put it this way. If someone went through, obviously no two people are the same, but if we took like 100 people who went through your journey, right, starting from your point, and there's going to be some randomness to it, and not all of them are going to arrive at your position, but it's going
yeah,
to be a much bigger percentage than if we took 100 people and they started off with the same mentality, but started off from being Hindu, for example, or another religion that's non-Abrahamic, or another Abrahamic religion. The percentages will definitely be more skewed that the people who end up in Islam are the ones who started off with it, even if the pursuit is the same. So
yeah, but
so
and
that
but
means that seed of like the beginning does affect the end, even like it affects what the ultimate truth is to them.
it's possible. I wouldn't be able to be honest. That wouldn't surprise me, because statistically, we know that when people grow up in a faith, most of them, they would end up, in the same faith. They would die on the same faith. So I would say that statistically, you're right, but that's not. I mean, to me, it's not a problem, or to Islam, it's not a problem, because Islam doesn't claim that most of humanity has to be Muslim, or must be Muslim, or the criteria for the truth of Islam is the number of people that follow it. Even if tomorrow all the Muslim would die, whether it's true or not wouldn't change. Like, if Islam is false, if
Now,
the whole
that's
of
not exactly what
humanity,
I mean by the numbers, though. Yeah, the numbers don't tell the truthfulness, but like I'm thinking about it if is as kind of an
yeah, yeah,
experiment, right? And
I
it's
understand.
about the percentages. Yeah, it's about the percentages, and not just the people in the world, but people put in this specific situation. The percentage will always have to do with the beginning, right? And what does that say about their personality and their like how good of a person they are, their virtue?
To be honest, to me, it wouldn't say anything about how good of a person they are, their virtue, because again, it supposes that we are completely able to free ourselves from any kind of like preconceived ideas. Again, I told you that I gave myself some criteria to read to find the truth. But maybe someone with a Hindu background would have completely different set of criteria. Maybe his criteria would
Mhm.
be to be like the truth has to be like several gods, layers of gods, with the maybe that's the criteria that we'll have to look into. But to me,
But if it's not
I
about
want
your how good of a person you are, isn't that the criteria that God uses, or part of the criteria that God uses in judgment?
no, not too much. No, there are two questions, because I think that
Mhm.
I don't. There are two parts here. When you see how good of a person you are, meaning, and there is one definition of what being good means in Islam. To me, being good means that you believe in God and you do good things. Like that's in the Quran it's always paired.
No, no,
Like
we're talking about outside of the belief in God part, like the previous example we're talking about. And if
like
they don't end up believing in Allah, if they end up believing in something else, you said it doesn't necessarily make them a bad person, or it doesn't speak to their goodness, right?
no, no. I mean, at least for me, I wouldn't be able that it does. No, God will be able to. God will
So, I
actually be
mean,
able to say.
I know you can't make the judgment for God, but I'm saying from an Islamic point of view in general, for a generic case,
Yeah,
that
but Islam doesn't say that that would make them a bad person. The only thing that Islam is very clear. What is a bad person is a person that actually sees the glimmer of truth that is within Islam and just chooses to reject it because he just doesn't want to submit to it. That is what
so the
the
people in that
kuffar.
example that we're talking about that went through
Yeah,
your
yeah.
journey, did
Oh,
they
okay.
see the glimmer of that truth?
Well, if they didn't end up Muslim, then I would say no. If they're honest and truthful, then I would say no. That's the thing that makes the most sense,
So they
and
would
that's
be
actually,
spared
and
from
that's
hell if
actually,
they're good people?
but that's what Islam says. Actually, that's not what I said.
Mhm.
Allah says that like um, uh, um, I don't remember the sentence, but the verse, but it says something like, we will not like submit anyone to torture without, having sent them a messenger, or, for them, without them having received the message. But having received the message doesn't mean that you just heard on the radio the word Islam and then you didn't immediately convert. It has to be something like
It was about the
acknowledging,
messenger, right?
ac-
It wasn't
ac-
about the
ac-
message.
yeah, the
Uh,
messenger. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
حتى نبعث رسولا. So
yeah.
it's about the messenger, but the messenger brings the message, right?
Mhm.
And today, I mean,
But
the
today,
message of Islam is
the
worldwide
messenger
known,
is not
right?
literal, right? Like the word the messenger today is meant, or I suppose that's
As in the
Muhammad
message.
still,
Yeah, yeah, that's Muhammad, salam, but it also means Islam as a message. It's not
not
because you've
just the
read of
messenger, but
Islam.
the message could be the messenger
The message could be the messenger.
because God uses the word messenger, right?
Yeah, 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 Rasulah. Yeah, so it's the messenger himself. But the idea that Islam has been sold, because before Muhammad alayhi salam, all the other prophets were sent to various people, not the whole mankind. At least that's in the Islamic understanding.
Mhm.
Christian, of course, would say that Jesus was sent to mankind. But for us, Muhammad was, Jesus wasn't. He was sent to the tribe of Israel. And so my point being that when it comes to Islam, Islam is supposed to be a message for the whole world. But doesn't mean that as soon as you hear it, immediately you are accountable in front of God if you don't immediately convert. That is not the message of Islam. I've never heard at least a Muslim say that's how we understand a kuffar. Kuffar means, again, you know that better than me because your Arabic is, I think, levels above mine. But kafara, right, means to
To
cover,
cover,
to cover up.
yeah, yeah.
This idea is very beautiful because it's not, it's translated in English as disbeliever or unbeliever. It's very poor word. The true sense of kafara is much more. It's much deeper, and it's also
Mm.
brings an understanding that you have to acknowledge as well, which is it's when you actually see something, but you choose to cover it. That's where
Well,
you become a
we're gonna talk about that again, that topic later. Um,
yeah.
but
With pleasure.
a thought that I had about that is before that you were talking about kafara. Man, I lost my train of thought. Um, sorry, just give me 1 second.
It's
Oh,
okay.
it's gone. It's gone. If I remember it, I'll ask you. But I know there are some questions here for you that people were asking, and I've put a couple of aside. Unless you had a thought you wanted to finish here.
You know what? If you allow me, I would like to expose to you. Can we have a few more minutes?
Sure.
Like two
Yeah.
to three. I'll try to make it short because I really wanted to pick your brain on this because I really didn't understand it on
Mhm.
genuinely. Um, so most of you people, I guess, of your audience has seen the video you put on the weakest Allah's God's weakest argument.
Sure.
The example of Namrud and the fact that Ibrahim alayhi salam told him, like, my God brings the sun from the east, bring it from the west. And I think, I mean, again, man, I have to ponder, like, this is such a, a slam dunk because, okay, he could have said something like, you know what, bring the sun from the west. That's it. Without saying, my God, bring it from the east, bring it from the west. He could have said only the second part. It would have been the same defeater in terms of logic, because immediately it shows that this guy is not God. That is exactly the purpose that he wanted to get to, which is remind everyone that God is not someone that you can walk around and see, like see on the side of the street. It is someone that is beyond all of this. So when he says, my God brings the sun from the east, what he means by that is that my God is the one that is beyond, that is behind everything, right? And you're not. So here's a proof, here's a challenge. Immediately make it come from the west. And I
Well,
found that
what
very
if I
good. But
apply that
you
challenge to Islam? What if I ask, like, what if anyone, how people were asking the Prophet for miracles, and multiple times the Prophet Muhammad would say, "I'm inni ma'akum min as-sabirin. I'm waiting with you.
mm,
God decides when to do a miracle." So what
yeah, but
if
that's
Namrud had said, "I'm God. I decide when to bring the sun from the east. You don't get to tell me what to do."
the thing. Don't forget that just before that, Nemrud actually took the challenge. So he already set a precedent. He
Yeah, but
already
he
saw to
doesn't have to
he
take both challenges.
Yeah, yeah, but that's the thing. That's where you make the doubt appear. Why did you take the first one and not the second one? Everyone in the audience would have to say, "Oh, look, he took the one that is any human could have taken, like spare a guy and kill the other, but he didn't take the only one that actually he couldn't." Like you
But
cannot.
you know what? Like, honestly,
Yeah,
I,
go
I
ahead.
don't even think. The bigger problem with that, the whole two challenges is that no real person in real life, who's not, an idiot, would answer that way. Like he would know,
Why?
like for example, "Ana uhyi wa umit," I bring life and take it away. That is
Yeah,
not what bringing life means, right? But let's say that person is very stubborn and whatnot, and he was just making fun, whatever it may be, and he killed one and left the other. But the whole sun part, like I said, um, what if I turn that challenge around to Islam? Like Islam has never really demonstrated physically anything, at least not to this generation. What if I say, then bring the sun from the east,
but
from the west?
that's okay. I'll give you two answers. I will answer to the first place. I very much disagree with the idea that only an idiot would actually bring that challenge. I think you really, because you're too reasonable, you really underestimate how arrogant people can get. And
No,
if
no,
you have a
I
king
believe
that,
that it could happen, but why would Allah use the silliest, easiest, low-hanging fruit examples? Like, why
because
didn't He bring?
but don't you see how an archetype it is? That guy is very much an archetype of what arrogance is. And Fir'aun was kind of the same type of thing, of guy.
Right,
He
but
was
where
so
are the
powerful.
reasonable disbelievers? Why didn't He talk to them? Why didn't He have a debate with someone like
But
myself, for example?
here you're making a different argument, which is I would have preferred him to address it that way. But that's kind of irrelevant
No,
in
it's,
a
it's
sense.
just the
No, look,
mythical
I'll tell
nature
you
of
why.
it.
I'll tell you
Yeah,
why. I'll tell you
yeah.
why. Because to me, he just needs to address a point. He doesn't need to address your point. And the
But
thing
that
that
point is irrelevant.
no,
That
no,
some
no.
guy thinks that he's God. Who cares?
But that's because that's okay. So maybe you're not familiar with the idea that a lot of, I mean, every single one of us here has a god in a sense of Islam,
Oh,
meaning we
yeah.
submit to something, right? I don't.
You can go
I'm
ahead.
not saying. But what I mean by that is just that we all will all have to follow something, whether it's our passion, whether it's our arrogance or greed or pride or lust, whatever. And that guy followed this particular arrogance, saying that I'm dominating the people, I am a god amongst the people, and that's the thing that was addressed in this particular example. It made sense. I would say to you that okay, he doesn't maybe address the argument that you want him to address at this point, like where are the actual reasonable disbelievers? All right, but where does it say that it has to address only these and not that one? That one
No,
also exists.
it's just that the
It's
Quran doesn't address these at all. The Quran addresses the very simple, easy to shut down
I wouldn't
arguments
agree.
or fights.
No, I wouldn't agree. I wouldn't agree. I would say that when it says like again, as I was telling you earlier, فَسِيرُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ فَانْظُرُوا كَيْفَ بَدَأَ الْخَلْقِ. It addresses the scientists, right? Oh, you guys are, like
It's not
pretending. Oh,
addressing it. It's just pointing to creationism, right? It's not
no,
really
because
actually proving it. It's just saying,
no, even the idea of bada al khalq, how creation started, not how it is today. Like creationism is
yeah.
the idea that the world came about that way, right? But the idea that bada that went through, like it started, so it went through phases. This idea is something that is much more
But I
interesting.
mean, started, right?
Well,
Like,
it means started, yeah, literally
well, how do
started.
you know it's about the phases and development and evolution rather
Because
than
man,
God starting it?
that's where you have to think that Aladdin, to me, that's where you have to think more about the Quran. When it says today, see how it started, it has to be about phases. Because
Why
if you
does it
can see
have
how
to
it's
be?
because
Because you
today,
already accept that it's the truth, and the only
no,
meaning it
no,
would make sense is.
no, because it makes sense for us to understand that it's evolved. Because if you can go around and see how it started and it's not how it is today, like
But
that's
is that
the
the
idea of
version that God
phases.
created? Didn't God create the earth in how many days? Um, I forgot, but how many days? And then He sat on the throne, right? It was specific.
استوى على العرش. It's not
Yeah,
really sat on the. He's more established himself on the throne. But yeah,
yeah.
that's the kind of Christian translation of the same idea. What I would say on this
But
is
like
that
how many? It was mentioned in days. How many days? I forgot off the top of my
I
head. But
think I think I think it's a few days, but there are other places in the Quran that says that a day to God is like 1,000 years or 100,000 years to us. So it's not like the day as in the sun goes around the earth once.
then
But
what's the point of mentioning days at all? Like
it's
what
about the
what
sequences.
benefit?
It's
What?
about the sequences. It's about the sequences, not about the actual time frame. But I
Right, and
mean,
the
we
sequence in
can
that is that God created the earth
the
and then the
universe
sky,
in sequences.
but
Yeah,
that's not the sequence it happened.
no, it established the sky, but depends what you mean by sky, right? If you
No,
mean by
even
sky
like
the
the
actual
earth and then the
atmosphere,
sky. Yeah,
no, no,
that's not
of
how it
course,
happened.
yeah, no, that's how it happens. If you're saying that the atmosphere was here before the Earth was, no, the Earth actually was formed, and then the atmosphere started to form around it, like over billions of years. That's how it happened, definitely. If you mean by sky the whole universe, then that's another understanding of the word. But we you cannot say that, like the word السماء refers to the actual universe by definition. We know that
But God
السماء has
said,
different.
like, السماء الدنيا وزيناها بمصابيح, so put, like, lanterns in it, which is the stars, right? So that's what
Yeah,
God
yeah.
means by السماء. So God's not talking about the atmosphere. God's talking about at least the first sky out of 7, right? So the
Well,
sequence isn't even really
I,
helpful here.
I'll have to look into that one, to be honest, because
Okay.
I don't remember that in the verse that it says he created the earth, then he created the stars. I never saw that
No,
verse,
I
so I'll
mean,
have to look up.
it was the earth and then the sky, and just someone correct me if I'm wrong, but in
Yeah, yeah,
other
yeah, but
verses,
but yeah,
there
but
was a
again,
sky.
you're saying, yeah, but no, you said the sky and he embellished the sky with the stars. That's what you said. So I
Yeah.
never I never saw I never saw the verse where he says that he created the earth, then the sky, then embellished the stars with
No, no,
the sky with the
I don't
stars.
remember the sequence that way. I'm saying, at some point there was a verse about زينا السماء الدنيا بمصابيح وجعلناها رجوما للشياطين, and so
Yeah,
on.
yeah, yeah. Okay, so
Um,
that's another, but
but I'm saying
that's
the definition of the
all
word
right.
sky, right?
Yeah, yeah, but that's my
That's the
point.
same
Sky
sky.
has different. No, no, we know that sky has. I mean, sama again has different. It's the same as alamin. It has the alam. It has different meaning at different places of the Quran. But that's kind of exegesis. It's kind of a
Like tafsir.
yeah tafsir. Yeah, so it's
Yeah.
it's a more of a complex subject, I would say. But like specialists, look into this. But I'm definitely up for like a chat at some point. I've
Okay.
looked a few of them, and I was more than convinced. I'll give you an example. uh, I mean, no, no, I don't want to like make
Yeah.
the people that are waiting like go to sleep. But I mean, I have many on these elements. I've got so many things with regard to the Quran itself, how it was brought about, and to me, how it made much more sense that you might give it credit for. And the thing that I wanted to mention to you with regard to this weak argument, I think we've been through it. I won't go again on this as a whole, but just to say that to me it made sense. And I accept the point that you say it could have made a meaning about the rational disbelievers, or the normal disbelievers, but that is not the point that you made in your video. In your video, you made the point that this actually makes no sense whatsoever. And I'm saying, to me, and I think that if we take the time, I can definitely again go through it, but I invite you to prove me how what I said made no sense. That the Nemrud accepted the challenge, and he did something that was kind of a trick, because when Ibrahim alayhi salam said that God brings life and death, he kind of turned the word to mean it something else, as you said. But that's how, like these people, that's sophistry, as we say in English.
Mhm.
That's kind of being smart. But then when Ibrahim brought the second challenge, oh, you're willing to take a challenge, here's the second, now deal with it. That is a very, very smart way to do it. And yet you said that is
I would say
this
it's
is
not. I mean,
but yeah,
like
yeah,
I
I
said,
understand.
does Allah have to prove himself to us? Does he have to,
No,
like,
but
listen to our
no,
whims
but
and do
but
it?
Allah has never done that. Allah has never done that for you or for me or for anyone
But he
that
has
like
for Prophet Musa, right?
he asked for Ibrahim alayhi salam as well. Like the challenge, he like just to ليطمئن qalbi, like
Yeah.
to ease my heart, right? But
Yeah.
Nemrud actually took the stage, and Nemrud is pretending to be God himself. So
No,
Ibrahim
that's
is
what I'm
actually
saying. So
addressing him.
God obliged in one challenge, right? Why
Yeah,
wouldn't he oblige again
but to who? To for what? And
to
when?
us?
That's the thing.
Like,
But
demonstrate that you're here, and not only that you're a creator, but that Allah is here.
but that's where also okay. So now you're moving to another point, which is interesting. But I'll give you my answer in 2 minutes. But um, basically, if God was to appear in front of us, that would be the end of free will for us. If God was to show in front of you, then that's it. I mean, when I say the end of free will, it would be like there is no choice for you left in the way you live, or the choices that you'll have to make. Basically, you will just become the same way angels are. Like you will
But
submit,
but here's the
and
thing,
that's
like, so the moment that you see God and you believe that he exists for sure, right? Do you have
it's
the
not about
same
belief
amount of
anymore.
faith? Sorry?
It's not about belief anymore, right?
Yeah, okay,
It's not
so
about faith
certainty,
anymore.
right? But
Yeah,
the
yeah.
believer who believes in God, right, and or has faith, or however you want to call it, they're almost at the same point, right? They know God is real for, like, almost a certain fact, and
Yeah.
they have to follow him, or else they're going to go to hell. It's the same thing.
No, because there's one situation where it's not about faith anymore. It's just about, like acknowledging the fact that it's demonstrated in front of you, and and the magnitude of the fact that is in front of you.
Well, that's
That's completely
faith would
different.
help you arrive to that point, and then the consequences is what you have to keep in mind, like hell and so
Yeah,
on. But if you
yeah,
know it for certainty, you still have the same consequences. So the two
yeah,
are the
but
same to me.
the logic, the idea of free will would just disappear. The same way that if you're in front of, I don't know, like
No, I wouldn't.
if
I mean, I would still like have a choice of going to hell or not going to hell or listening to God, just like a
yeah,
believer
in
in their
theory,
mind has the same choice.
yeah, yeah, in theory it will still exist, I would say, but in fact it would be gone. If you imagine,
So
let's
so
say,
does a believer have free will? Because it's about the
I
same.
I would say that a believer has free will because we choose to accept Islam or not. It's a choice that we have to make through a quest, and we submit in
No,
our
I'm
own
saying like
ignorance. In a sense.
past that point, like once they acknowledge that God exists and they believe in him, right?
Yeah,
At
yeah.
that point, they're similar to someone who's seen God, right? And where they go from there, they
No, I
both don't
wouldn't
have
say that
free
they're
will.
similar. I wouldn't say that they're similar because it's still a leap of faith. There's still an element of accepting something that you haven't seen based on all the elements that we were able to gather. So there is still a kind of a humbleness, if you want, in it. As
And
in,
is that a virtue? That leap of faith, is that like a good thing?
yeah, yeah, because it's acknowledging a limit that we all have, and whether or not we choose to accept to acknowledge it, that's a virtue, I would say. Because in a sense, atheists or believers, none of them will have 100% certainty. There is this the Richard Dawkins scale, on 1 to 7, how believer or disbeliever you are. And I would say that no one on earth could say that I'm 100% sure, no doubt whatsoever, God exists. Like I've met him. That's not how it works. Now you can be 99% sure for all the reasons that you might have experienced through life and so on. The same as the atheist. The atheist would never be able to be 100% sure that God doesn't make sense or is not needed or it doesn't exist. But he might like err in the more or less extreme side. And I would say that that's the way it is as long as God doesn't appear to us. That's always how it's going to be. Now,
But, like, what I'm trying to get at here is that from the point of you saw God physically, right? You're saying you have no free will past that point. But
yeah,
if you
when
believe in your heart that
maybe that's
God is
the
real, right?
maybe that's the wrong sentence. When I said
Yeah.
you have no free will, what I meant by that, sorry, is that you have no freedom. That's more what I should have said. Free
That's
will, you
even
all have.
better. So, do you
Yeah,
have freedom as a Muslim once you believe God exists? No, because like you
yeah,
know the consequences are hell, so you have no freedom.
yeah. You have the freedom to accept to submit yourself. That's basically it.
But you've
But
already submitted yourself, right? Do you have any
once you're a
freedom
Muslim,
in doing haram things and halal things? You
you
don't have
have the
freedom
free
anymore,
will. You
right?
have to. You have the free will to do it. You have the free will because no one is going to restrain you within this land, but you will have to pay for it if you actually
Hmm.
decide, to do like haram things,
But
like
isn't that the same as
disregarding God.
seeing God and then deciding to do the same thing afterwards?
No, because I think that the magnitude of the proof will be much beyond. There is
You'd be a better sorry, you'd be a better follower of Islam if you saw God than your
yeah, for
current.
sure. Yeah, for sure. Because at this point, the magnitude of what you would have witnessed would just basically collapse any kind of, like a passion you might have that might deter you in the
No,
first
I'm
place.
talking like you, for example, right? So if the way that you practice Islam now, and if God appeared in front of you, would the way that you practice Islam change?
Ah, that's an amazing question. Never asked myself this. Man, that's why I have to talk to you. Uh, never wondered that question. If God was to
Wait,
appear to
take
me,
a second to think about it because there's some comments that I want to address myself. Um, Someone was saying, okay, someone doesn't understand the point of this conversation. They're like, you're attacking the honesty of the guy. Am I attacking your honesty?
no, no, not at all.
No.
So sorry, Zailisi, thank you so much for, I don't know, defending me maybe. I mean,
Yeah.
in my view, the way you, again, I'm saying you, knowing we don't share the same faith, the I felt that's what I told you before actually on the
Mhm.
chat at some point, but I feel more sincerity in a sense in you than most people. So no, no, definitely
Thank you.
not. I mean, Zailisi, sorry. I
Yeah.
mean, maybe at some point, I don't know, something in the
No,
conversation made
that
it
was in the
weird, but
beginning too. That was before we started having a more like immediate back and forth.
really,
And another comment was saying they're really like frustrated by your answers, and
sorry, really. Oh,
I
sorry.
don't like that. Like I wanted to tell this person this conversation is going well. Like we don't have to agree for the conversation to be going well. and we disagree so much, and I still don't understand how he thinks, but I'm getting him to talk about it, and he's getting me to talk about how I think. So I really appreciate the conversation. So yeah.
But
Anyway.
I'm happy
Mm.
to, like, if that person like actually had a question within that torture element, maybe I can try to address it, at some
Mhm.
point. But
Oh,
I mean, I
you're
can't
going to
make
be back
comments.
for sure. We're going to talk about a lot of other topics as
Sure,
well.
sure,
So
with pleasure,
yeah.
with pleasure. But yeah, so yeah, that's my short answer to this would be, if God was to appear to me, yeah, 100%, I would be like because doubt can always creep in your mind, and you can always be caught in life, like the daily life, the stupid life, the
Mhm.
one that makes you go through a red light even if you knew you shouldn't. Well, if the cop is right in front of you, you know that you will not go through the red light, right? So imagine what it would be like if God was in front of you. you know that,
Mhm.
that's how I would say it. And again, that's within us. We
But
like
God's
to.
presence just once, like God showing up once, not always being in your face, but just actually, instead of you relying on your faith and
Ah, right,
reasoning and
okay.
everything,
Yeah,
just
yeah,
God
well.
showing up once, that would change how you practice Islam. You would adhere more strictly.
So you ask. So I answered your first question. No, yes.
No,
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 that's
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 the
a good.
same
No, I'm
question.
kidding. I'm
Like,
kidding. No, no, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
yeah.
I'm kidding. Yeah, man. That's. I would say that yes, it would change everything, because the moment he would basically show himself to me, I would say that yeah, yeah, it's just now it's 100% now. But the problem is that I would always have to question myself, like what I saw was actually God, like, because
Yeah.
he's not supposed to appear in this life. He's not supposed to be here. God is never going to appear like 20 miles. And it says in the Quran, like, if God was
But
to
what if
no,
the
maybe not
premise
in the
was
Quran, but
different? I mean, you're saying God, if God would have shown himself, there's no freedom here to like, yeah. But what if the premise was God would appear like once in everyone's life in the beginning and be like, "Hey, I am God. This is true. You understand it. There's no delusion here or questioning."
But in a sense, you already have the answer. I mean, Islam tells you that you were born on the fitrah. The idea that you were born with the innate
It's
kind
an
of will to.
allegation, but like
It's an
it's
allegation, but but
yeah.
but there are studies that actually are supporting it. Like, there's a massive study that a few thousand children that show that it was an innate
There's studies about
within us to believe, but
looking for a
of course not
purpose or
not to.
something. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, not to look it for purpose, but to think that there is something bigger or beyond, or that there is something, like a kind of entity, like we are drawn to believe in it. Now, it doesn't make it true, of course. And again, Harari, sorry, would say that it's kind of an evolution trait. So I wouldn't be able to, like, push this further, because if
Hmm.
someone wants to believe that it's evolution, and there is no really way to reconcile these two, I would say that evolution is definitely truth, by the way. But if you say that it's pure random, I would say that it's not random. It was designed by God. But who can say that
Hmm.
the fitra is a thing or not? Scientifically,
Yeah.
on a scientific point. But so that's pretty much it. I would say that if God was to appear in front of me today, I would very much question, like, is it actually God? Because he's not supposed to appear
No, but I'm
on
saying
this
like
earth.
we get to come up with this scenario, right? If God were
Yeah.
to demonstrate himself to
Yeah, I would say
everybody.
that yes, if God was to, like, make himself known, as in, here, now that he exists, that he's
Mhm.
real, you actually know it is not a belief anymore. Yeah, I would say that like the whole earth would be, I guess, like, the doubt would have less place to actually creep in, or
Mhm.
the arrogance and so on would have to less place to actually develop. Yeah.
Well, aside from the whole world, just for you yourself, it would change how you practice Islam,
How practice?
like, or
I
your
would say
adherence
yes. I
to it.
would say yes. I would say yes, because I would still say that to this day I can still, again, as I was telling you, fall into daily life, and like again, not
But the
like
thing that
not
would like bring
recycled.
you back
Like,
from this distraction would be having seen Allah, right? That 100% certainty. So
I
are
would
you
say that
not at
it's
100%?
no, no. I'm not. I wouldn't say that I'm 100%. That's where the leap of faith comes.
Hmm.
Like, it's the same idea, like, the agnosticism thing, this thing that you don't know, you can't pretend that you know, and I cannot pretend that I know. But I would say that if I'm honest, I would say that I'm 98% sure that like, no, 99% that God is real, and maybe 95% that Islam is, because I would say that God has always, in a sense, priority over any religion. I would say that Islam has very, very much convinced me, but the the existence of God is much more powerful to me. That is almost a there. I see no way out. Basically, he has to exist. That's the only thing that makes sense to me.
and
based on
and then
all the
there's a
things that
leap
I
of faith
investigated.
to get you to like the rest of it, right? But if
The
you
leap
were to
of
see
faith is,
Islam, it'll be 100%. It's Allah, it's God, it's Islam.
yeah,
But
yeah. I
so
mean,
that little bit
the
of
day we die, the day we die is the day
mhm,
that we have no doubt anymore, right? No one on the day of judgment, based on Islam, of course,
mhm,
will actually doubt that he's there. You know, like, and I'll give you an example just to in the Quran I read when I was younger. Some people will actually question the Prophet, saying, "But will God really bring us back from like when our
mhm.
bones are just dust?" And I always found that very fascinating because I thought, what a weird objection. And someone like you might even say, "Oh, that's a dumb objection. Like only like a such an idiot, or
No,
like, oh, you don't
that's a
say that."
decent question, yeah.
Really? Okay, okay. Well, to me it
Especially at
was
the time,
weird.
yeah.
Yeah, but to me it was weird because I thought, and the Quran says exactly, well, the one that will bring you back is the one that brought you about in the first place. And that's such an obvious response. And you know what I thought at the time? I thought, what a weird challenge that the Quran has just displayed here. Like, who is actually going to ask this? And the thing is, a couple of years ago, I heard in a video Richard Dawkins actually asking this exact question, and I was kind of dumbfounded by it because I was like, Richard Dawkins in a video says, "Oh, but what, you really think that you will be brought back to life from like your bones?" And it's like, why? And I was really surprised. Like, that question is a bit dumb to me, because if he created you in the first place, created the whole universe, what in the world would stop him from
Mhm.
creating you again and again and again? As
Yeah,
like,
I'd have to hear what he's saying because that doesn't sound like an interesting question. I want to
yeah,
hear
well,
how he posed it. But
if you want,
yeah,
I'm pretty sure I can find the link.
yeah, well,
But
I'll check it out.
that was really his question. Like, really, like, you will be brought back. Do you really think? I mean, with like his English kind of um, uh, um,
Yeah.
style. I like his style actually. But I mean, I found that very interesting. So
Well, here's what I really want to zero in on. I want to specify this part. So you mentioned, of course, your certainty in Allah, or you wouldn't need faith anymore if you saw Allah in front of you, and like He demonstrated He's Allah and everything, right? And you know you're not delusional or crazy. Um, it would be certainty. It wouldn't be faith, right? I don't think you used the word certainty, but it would be certainty, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So how
There
would
will be
that
no
make you?
believing anymore in it. It will
Yeah,
just
it's
be
not
a
belief
fact.
anymore.
The same as, I've got like hand and
Yeah,
stuff.
it's a demonstration. It's actual certainty, and cogito ergo sum. So you're not gonna like, you're not gonna question whether reality is real at that point. Like it is what it is.
But that's the
Um,
thing. Yeah. I
but
mean,
here's what
if
I
it
want to
was
get at.
sure, yeah,
So
yeah,
you said it would make you adhere to Islam even stronger. So in yours and right now the things that would pull you away from Islam are distractions or this and that, right? Like life. So
yeah.
how would that change after God has demonstrated his existence? Like, are you going to be thinking more of the punishment?
No, I wouldn't say so. I would say that it depends on how he appeared to me, But if I was to see him, I think that it would just make me more eager to actually meet him afterwards, and like, go through
Mhm,
everything that you want to go through when you meet the being that actually created everything. Now, to your point, and you mentioned that quite a couple of times, I think that's something that's missed by a lot of people. Islam actually used all the engines that we have as human. When it comes to some people, they move more for fear. Some people move more towards something, some move away from something, some move just from the sake of moving. And those three different engines, Islam addresses them all. If you're someone that moves only when you're threatened, then here's hell, and there's nothing worse. If you're someone that moves when he's endeared, called, like inspired, then here's heaven. And if you're someone that moves just because the beauty of moving, then here is the let's say the engine within it, the pleasure and the spirituality and the peace that you will find within it. So I would say that for me, I'm kind of on all of them. Sometimes I move more for the reward, sometimes for the fear, and sometimes just because I find such peace in it. And so, if God was to appear to me, I would say that all of these would rise, or I would be,
mm,
more eager to meet Him. I would be more motivated, and I would find more peace, and at least in me, like, all doubt would be erased once and for all. And maybe even the hell would actually kind of disappear, because again, I mean, once the one and the second engine are full power, then hell kind of like loses a bit of its strength, because heaven is real now.
mhm.
um, But so yeah, that's how I would respond to this. But I
I,
never thought about this
I've
much
got a couple
before.
of
So
things that what you said made me think of. So you mentioned, okay, so I want to talk about what if I met God, like actually he demonstrated himself to me, what would go on in my mind. And you mentioned the three approaches, and God is appealing to all three, which is hell, heaven, and basically the pursuit for truth, right? Can I
and
phrase it that way?
the inner peace, it's actually more
Inner,
than it's only
yeah,
intellectual. It's also, you know, like how you
spiritual.
feel with, yeah, spirit, yeah, definitely, yeah.
Sure. But I wanted to mention that those three conflict with each other. So someone viewing Allah as this petty torture kind of thing would affect their ability to believe in him. So it's kind of a hindrance for that person. So this blanket
Why?
approach isn't targeting each person with their own mentality. It's kind of affecting it's noise on the other person.
I
Mm.
wouldn't say so. I would say that that's the case only if you have a wrong understanding of either. I mean, it's not an Islamic understanding, at least. The idea that there is a pettiness, as you said, that
Yeah.
is something that makes no sense to me with regard to God's attributes.
Then
Like he
what
has
is the
99 of them, and pettiness is not one of
well,
them.
just because it's claimed that way.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
for sure. I
but
understand
like,
your point. Of course, I'm joking with you, but
yeah.
look, the thing is, to be honest, Aladdin, to me, there is something else that you never actually, I think, thought of. I mean, I said this. Sorry,
No,
I
no,
don't
go
want
go for it.
don't mean
I'm not
to
offended.
overstep there, but
Yeah.
of course, hell has to be the worst thing that you could ever imagine. It cannot be any other way. If hell was just like a, it's going to be mild, like you will have a small prick here and like move on, then there is not something that would deter the worst of humans to actually do the worst things they could do. So it had to be something that would. So if based on this you're like, oh, but therefore God is petty, then I think you just have a misunderstanding of what this is about. It's just about making sure that the best of the best is what awaits you in paradise, and the worst of the worst is what awaits you in hell, so that you could not imagine any other reason to move in the wrong direction.
Well,
And
here's
if I was to tell
yeah.
you, if I was to give you an example, allow me just, if I was to say that God's hell is just like again a slap on the hand, and someone in front of you will say, look, if you don't go and kill this this 10 years old, uh, I will actually cut you in pieces, cut your families, cut your. Then you realize that God's threat is not even as strong as that guy's threat, so you'll be more reasonable to follow that guy's command rather than God's command.
Mhm.
Now the thing is, hell being the worst thing it can be, you have no better option than actually obey it, basically. And that's the main point of Islam. It's about obeying to God, not about obeying to people, however fearful you might be of them, or however you know uh, eager to please them you might be. And that's
Mhm.
that's how it makes sense. And
Well,
again,
here's the
when
thing about
yeah,
hell, though. Okay, I understand your explanation of hell has to be the worst thing imaginable. Otherwise, there would be
it
a
loses
reason
its
not
power.
to fear it. There would be
Yeah,
something worse to fear than hell, right?
yeah.
It has to be the ultimate. But
Knowing that everyone
mhm.
doesn't have to react to hell. Some people will react to fear more than to threat more
No,
than
no, I
anything else.
understand. I mean, my point was that the mere mention of these like three approaches will cause noise. Like it will interfere with for some people. Like for yourself, for example, it doesn't, but for some people it would. But here's the thing
Yeah.
about hell. Okay, so what does God gain, or what is the purpose of hell for disbelief? Like forget people who kill or who do any sins. Obviously, disbelief is a major sin and a crime in Islam, and shirk is the worst of crimes. But what is the reparation for that? Like, what is the point of the torture? Is it paying back something? Is it fixing a situation? What does
Let
it
me
do?
give you okay. Let me give you
Mm,
my rational response and see if you can find any, in a sense, limit to it. Uh, Shirk has to be the worst sin. It has to have the worst sentences as well. Why? Because that's the one element on which all the other sins are being built. Meaning, uh, believing in God is the starting point to accepting Islam and to accepting its rule. Therefore, if believing in God is not the most important command, and therefore the worst disobedience, then the other meaning would not make sense. If I was to say, for example, that killing is worse than not believing, the base for me to even say that killing is worse than not believing is a command that is whose premises is that believing is the most important thing. I don't know if you see. I don't know if,
You're
if I
saying
make
the
sense
source
here.
of morality is that belief that in God is the source of morality, right?
Yeah, I mean, with regard to to Islam, of course it is. That's why it had to make believing or not believing the worst if you want infraction, let's say the worst crime, because
No,
that
your
is the
explanation makes sense within the framework of Islam. That's a very good point. Like if you already like within the whole like I don't know what to call it. Yeah, the framework.
yeah, yeah.
It does make sense that the source of morality, whatever God says is good or bad. So of course, disobeying God is the prerequisite to all that morality.
Yeah, but
But
a lot of people don't realize
Mhm.
that. A lot of people are like, oh, but why isn't killing? For me, killing is worse than disbelieving, or
Well, that's because they're outside
rape.
of that framework, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah, exactly. But the thing is, and I mean, that will have to be another discussion. But it is clear to me that if you don't ground your morality in some kind of belief in the like the creator, then it will have to be a subjective moral base. There is
oh,
no
that
way
yeah,
that.
that is a whole other
But yeah, yeah,
discussion.
yeah, yeah. Let's
We'll
move on
get to
from
that
this.
later. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. That's some other
or
points.
another day.
But
But
the thing that I want you to appreciate here is that Islam is very consistent in this. Like that would have been a flaw within Islam if Islam had said that killing is worse than not believing. That would have been a flaw because it would completely like how do you say that, sabotage the claim itself. If I was to say
okay,
that
here's
killing is worse than not
let me phrase
believing,
it this way. Let me phrase it this way. It might help us get to like closer to the point. If someone kind of follows the same morality as Islam, right? Pretty much everything except for the belief in God part. So they
Mhm.
haven't. The only thing that they've broken is the prerequisite to all this, the source of all this morality.
Yeah.
But the morality they followed, what harm have they caused? Like that they deserve punishment for? Is it harm to
But
Allah?
that's the thing. The thing is, the truth is that Aladdin, if you don't know that, let me tell you, no one says that they have made a harm to Allah. I mean, no Muslims thinks that Allah has
Yeah, no,
suffered.
no, I understand. So, what
That's
is
the
the
first thing. The
punishment
second thing,
fixing,
that's
or
the
what is
thing.
it? Yeah,
The Quran, the Islam doesn't say that these people will be punished. It doesn't say that someone that did all the good things but just didn't believe in God in Islam will be punished. It says that people who actively reject Islam will be punished. So if you're telling me, oh, if someone is really good to his neighbor and so on, but he truthfully rejected God, which is kind of what you're getting at, I guess,
mhm.
then yeah, to Islam, to Allah, He's made the worst of of of,
But
of crimes.
who is being
But
harmed here?
no, but
Like,
well,
what is the point
oh,
of punishment except
okay,
to?
but
Yeah,
that depends on what is the point or the purpose of life. If you think that the purpose of life is limited to like being good to your neighbor and so on, then yeah, that's your horizon and you will see no wrong. But in Islam, the purpose of life is very clear. Our purpose as beings is to worship the Creator.
yeah.
That is
So
the most important command to us. So when
the
you say
way I
what harm
understand
has
it, like,
been
look,
done,
God brought
the-
us to this life, right, to worship Him, and if you fail at that, then you didn't harm God. He is not hurt by it, but He's still gonna take revenge about that.
no, but that's the thing. You read it wrong because it's not about. I mean, to me, sorry, I said
Mhm.
to me, it's not about taking revenge on you. It's more about making it very clear that this is a very, very grave offense to
Yeah,
actively
who is it
reject God.
offending? Like offense usually has some harm to it, or someone
But
who's being
it's offending a
offended.
command. It's offending the command.
So
It
so
doesn't.
what is the point of this whole
You're saying
dilemma to
it's
begin
like.
with?
But I think I think that you're making here a moral mistake. I think you're thinking that moral let's say crimes only occur when someone is crimed upon in a sense, but that crimed upon, that's not the sentence, but someone
Yeah,
is
like
hurt, yeah,
yeah,
but that's not the definition of crime. That's not a crime is just basically
can
going
there be a
against a
victimless
rule.
crime? Not even yourself, like a victimless crime?
I would say so, yeah. You might be but that's the thing, you might be the victim of your crime without acknowledging it.
Yeah, but
What we
what's
you,
the crime against myself here that deserves me like me being punished for it? Like what
you're
am I
going
getting
against
harmed by not believing, except
you
by the
you you
punishment itself?
you're going against what you're supposed to be doing. That is the crime. The crime
Yeah,
is
but
that
what
you're
I'm saying,
supposed to
like,
be.
what is the crime? Who is the crime against? Against Allah, right?
But that's the thing. Again, you're trying to frame it as. I mean, if I understand correctly, you're trying to say that if no one is hurt, then there is no crime. But I'm saying that you're the one that is making a crime against yourself And that's what Islam says. That's what the Quran says. Like they have wronged themselves. So the wrong is against themselves as people. Now you might be like, oh, but if I choose to wrong myself. But again, Islam here is very internally coherent. What it says is that you don't belong to yourself. Islam tells you that you do not belong to yourself. You have free will. You can choose to obey or not obey, but there is no, you do not belong to yourself. You belong to God, and therefore what you're supposed to do is what your honor is supposed to be doing, and that
Well,
is
let
how
me.
we treat everything around
Okay,
us.
here's an example of a crime,
Uh,
for example. Like,
yeah,
let's use a tattoo, for example, or maybe not a tattoo. Um, let's say, for example, a certain drug, right? I'm not
yeah.
condoning drug use on this stream. I'm just saying, let's say you take a certain drug.
Neither am I.
Yeah, I'm just making that disclaimer. Let's say you take a certain drug, and it's not going to harm anyone around you, and you're not going to harm anyone except yourself.
Yeah.
And then do you think it's productive to then be punished for that drug that you took and harmed yourself with?
Uh, you know what? I think I'll give you the answer. I would say that punishing you if it stops you from taking more drugs, then that's
No, but
giving you a
like it's
service.
over. Like I'm past taking, like there's no more of that drug on earth. Like it was just one pill. I took it and I harmed myself with it, and then it's done
Yeah,
and I
but
can't do that again.
yeah, but that's where I'm sending you back to the first element that I gave you. If the rule of not taking the drug is also going to be the rule that will prevent you from doing all the harmful thing, then it has to be something that is punished.
Will
Otherwise,
like
none
disbelief cause you to do harmful things?
it
But that's
can.
a
That's
harmful
the
thing to
point.
other people. We're just trying to isolate like the crime against God alone.
But you taking the premise that you're taking is wrong because once you do not believe, no one can say what you will be doing. You might be doing ending up doing good things. You might end up doing the worst things of all. And the thing is, once we say that, oh, but disbelieving is not harmful, let it go, then you just open the door to
No, no,
base
that's the whole
definition.
like moral discussion, but I'm talking about a
Yeah,
specific case of someone did everything Islamically except for believe in God, right? Like they're a good person and everything.
yeah, yeah,
The
yeah,
the
yeah,
crime is against God's rule or God
yeah,
himself.
yeah, yeah,
And you're saying you might be harming yourself by you're harming yourself by not following that rule, right?
yeah, yeah. Okay,
That's
yeah,
the
yeah. That's
crime
what I'm
against
saying.
yourself. The crime is against
Yes,
Allah and yourself because your purpose is to worship Allah and so on.
yeah,
And yourself doesn't belong to yourself; you belong to Allah. So by extension, your crime is against Allah.
yeah,
But
yeah.
if, like in this analogy, you take that harmful drug and you harmed yourself, knowing that there's going to be consequences if that version is true, that the person knows the consequences and they still do it, and then how productive is it to then harm yourself again as a punishment? What does it achieve at all?
But you're taking this example as in in a vacuum. But again, that is kind of distorting the thing because to me, if if you say okay, but this one was a good guy, so if he was a good guy, so he disbelieves, there's no point in punishing him, even if he actually really rejected Islam. Then what you're saying by the same token is that if he disbelieved by his own accord and did bad things, you shouldn't punish him either, because what you're doing at this
N-
point is that you're only
That's
punishing
the
the
whole concept
actions.
of punishment. No, but I'm talking about the crime, the point of a punishment in general, right? You're saying it's a deterrent at first, right? A punishment or a promise of a punishment is a
Yeah,
deterrent.
but that's not the only point, though. The point that I've made is that it's a deterrent, that's for sure. But it's
Hmm.
also about justice, about the actual crime being made, and that's the whole concept of punishment in Islam. It's a deterrent, it's justice for what is being done.
So
Like
yeah, how is justice achieved when a crime that doesn't hurt God is then punished eternally? Like, what is why does God need to get justice on a story that He already predestined?
oh, so okay, so you made two
Or
points here. The predestination
okay,
is
let's leave aside predestination because I know that's a very complicated
yeah, yeah,
topic.
that's
But
that's
a being that He created, right, a
yeah,
small insignificant being
yeah,
committing
yeah.
a crime, he feels wronged for that crime, but he's also simultaneously not hurt. But the
No,
punishment
he's
is
not.
justice.
Yeah,
What is gained by this punishment?
but why does it if well, justice is gained? Why isn't that already not enough?
But how does the
It's
punishment
like saying
equate
it's
to
like okay,
justice?
let me just give you an example. It's like
Mhm.
saying I've killed someone. Now that person is already dead. So what's the
But
point of killing
that's
me?
harm to someone else, right?
Yeah,
We're
but he's
talking
already
about
dead. He's already gone. So
no,
now
no.
that he's gone,
There's
what's
no
the point of
harm.
adding?
there's no harm in disbelief to God.
I
I'm talking
understand your
about
point, but
yeah.
as you said, your example is very clear. It's, I've taken a drug. Now that I'm dead, what's the point of punishing me? I've disbelieved. Now that I'm dead, what's the point of punishing me? But you're punished because of the justice of what you've done, whether it's over or not. That's not the point,
So
and that's how
what
justice
does the
works,
punishment
anyways.
do to achieve justice? Like for justice
Well,
to be
but that's
yeah.
the thing. That's the thing that I think you keep on missing is that it's actually very, very wrong to actually know that God created you and choose. That's very precise
Well,
what I'm
that
talking
case
about.
doesn't
And choose.
exist, but we've yeah,
It,
we're gonna
uh,
disagree, agree
uh,
to
I
disagree.
would say it's weird because you must know that arrogance exists, and people might not want to submit even if they know that there is truth in something. That is again something that you observe every day. And when I say no, I'm not saying we know, like I have hands. There is an element of faith in it, of course, but
No,
that's
how
the
can
thing
you be
that
held responsible for not wanting to take a leap of faith that doesn't make sense to you?
if you're saying that it actually makes that, but that's the thing. Islam doesn't say that that's what happened to you, to
Mhm.
someone. It says that if you actually disbelieved, as in you hid, you knew something was true, but you chose to cover it. That's what disbelieving is. That's what a kuffar is. Then there is a massive, massive crime being committed there because you reject basically the one who created you, the only one that you
Let's
owed
presume
your
that
life
is
to.
true. I mean,
Yeah,
I don't think that case ever exists, but let's just presume that is true, right? Let's presume God is in front of me and he says, you know, you should worship me and do all of this, and I do everything which is being good to everybody else except the worship him part. Um, like what does God gain through what does this justice mean for God? Was he
but but,
lacking the
but
justice if
you
I
f-
harmed
you
him, like
you
or
f-
wronged him?
you're phrasing it in a very innocent way, but
Mhm.
I could say exactly the same thing and phrase it like, I had my neighbors because I liked it. I had my, I was good to my friend or to my kids. I knew you created me, but just, you know what, I just didn't care. I didn't want to, want anything to do with you, and surely I didn't want to submit to you. So, like go to hell, in a sense. Well, that is
Mhm.
the same thing as you're saying, but it's a lot less nice. Of course, I could say the same. The thing that you have to understand that you could turn anything in a nice way if you want. I could be like, yes, of course, I killed that guy, but like I don't know, I didn't
No,
feel
but
good that
every
day. It was
example
a,
you can think of, there's harm. In this example, there's no harm. That's where it
but
doesn't make sense to
you're
me.
saying that there is no harm, but we don't agree there. I'd say that there is massive harm.
Who's being harmed?
Yourself to start with.
So
You
again,
don't,
if
and
I'm harming myself after the fact, I should be punished for harming myself. That part
but
doesn't make sense.
no, but okay. So okay, I understand. I just got
Mhm.
another point. You don't see at all the idea of a disobedience. To
No, no,
you,
I understand
disobedience
the
doesn't
idea
make
of
sense.
disobedience, and I understand like okay, if someone disobeys a law, it's all coming from a point of tyranny more than anything. You know, like laws exist, for example, for a reason because there's
Yeah,
harm,
yeah.
whether it be to
But there is a
yourself or
reason for
somebody
this
else.
too.
But in this law, it's just God created us to worship Him.
Yeah.
There is no benefit He gains from it, but
No,
there's a
but
lot
he
of harm
decided
that
to.
that He's created as a consequence of not doing that.
The thing is, he created you with a purpose, like anyone, like anything else he created. He
Mhm.
decides what we're supposed to do. He tells us what we're supposed to do. Now he gave us free will to know to either go with it or not. Now you said that if there is no victims, there is no crime. But that is not the true definition of a crime. A crime, by definition, is transgressing a rule. That's an important rule, of course.
Well,
And
rules have
this
to
is,
make sense, right?
but why does it? But if okay, so what you're saying is that not obeying God being a crime doesn't make sense. But that's the thing that I don't really agree with, because not disobeying God is just opening the door to anything. Basically, it is the root cause of all the crimes that you could imagine. Basically.
I don't believe that. But
Well, but
if it's
that's the
just
thing. That's
about
that's the
yeah,
question about morality, right?
mhm.
I mean, if we consider that morality is subjective, of course you would not believe that because you would think that whatever you deem moral is going to be moral,
But
and
we can dismiss all of that with the case of a good person, you know, good in every definition except for
but by
prayer,
yeah,
right?
yeah, but he happened to be good. He could also have happened to be bad, and
Yeah,
to
no, I'm
him
talking about the one
to the
case of the
person it would
person who
be.
happened to be good.
Yeah, I understood your point, but mine being that he might be good, but the it's like saying, you know what, I've been good. Sorry, again, I use
No, no, I
an
get your
example
point.
you don't
You're
want me.
saying
But
there's a chance it could have turned out differently. There's a chance the
yeah,
person could not have. But we're not talking about like, is God covering all the like? That would be unfair to judge that person because there's a chance other people would have ended up with a different outcome. Being a bad person who's a disbeliever.
but that's because, again, the way I think the thing that would make it difficult for you to understand is, as long as you consider that not obeying God is not important, or not submitting to God is not important, of course we'll never agree. To me, it is the most important thing is
Yeah,
obeying
that's what
God.
I'm trying to
That
understand. Like, not just from your point of view that it is important, but why would God find it to be extremely important to the point of torture?
And this is where we make a magnificent circle back to, at some point when things are like, the question is, why did God create us, in a sense? Or, like, couldn't he create us in a different way? Or these type of questions are exactly the type of questions that I don't have answers to. Basically, I don't, meaning that once I acknowledge that, based on all the information that I have, that Islam makes sense, knowing why God created us to worship him, in a sense, that's the question that is behind your question. Cannot answer
I
that
mean,
question.
the
No
thing
one
is,
can.
you come across you come across something like this, right? And you don't have an answer to it.
Yeah, yeah.
One way to get out of it is, and by get out of it, not like to intellectually dishonestly get out of it, but more like to resolve the problem is it actually does not make sense. It's not about it makes sense, but the answer is too big for us to grasp. It just doesn't make sense
No,
that
no,
a
because
person,
no,
yeah,
that's not the claim that you're making. I think, Aladdin. I mean,
mhm,
if I understood correctly, you were saying, why did God need to create us to worship him? That is the question that you're asking in the end. Because if God creates us and says, look, human being, your most important thing is you have to worship me. That is the one thing, that is the basis. Now I've given you reasons for this basis to be true, which are within the realm of thinking that we can both of us do, which is that this has to be the base of everything, the worst crimes of all, because is that is the one command that, once you obey it, you can start to build upon all the commands, right? Don't kill
mhm.
is a command that is absolute, because it is relying on the fact that you believe in God.
But what if you
Otherwise,
have all of these same morals? Like,
I
are you
understand
saying
your
in your
point,
day-to-day life, you
but
and I, for example, we
that
don't
is not.
do, yeah,
No, that is not. I understand your point, but that is not the point that I'm making here, which is that God. I can give you reasons why believing in God has to be the most important command and the worst of the crimes. This is
no.
something that,
What you're saying, I understand that it's
that's one
generally
point.
you're saying generally it's a basis for morality, and generally it's for the best of humanity that they believe in God so that they have a solid
Yeah.
basis for these rules.
So
But
that's
I'm
one
talking
thing
about
that is
specific
within the
cases.
realm.
Yeah.
I know, but that's
Mhm.
within the realm of thinking that both of us can go through. Now, I move this aside, and you ask another question that is kind of more, I don't know how to say that, but that's even more removed, further away from,
More
removed further away
abstract, I
from
guess.
us. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, which
Yeah.
is, but why did God create us to worship Him? Because, again, I mean, if we had the answer to that question, maybe we could answer the question as, but why does it matter if we don't worship Him? Like that, because if you don't answer to the first question, you cannot answer the second. And the first one, as far as I know, I don't know of the answer, Islam wise, Islamically, sorry. Uh, I don't know the answer to that question. Like, why did God create us to worship Him? But there is a response that I think the Quran says, that gives, that is, he created us because he decided to, in a sense. Like, he decided, and once he decided, then he just said, like, be, and here we are. That's basically how it is. But we don't question God. That is not, we don't question as in, but why did God do it that way and not that way? That is, by definition, that is us projecting ourselves as if we could, knowing, like, if you were God, would you do this? That kind of question is nonsensical to me. We're definitely completely different from Him. So trying to make sense of what He does for Him beyond
Mhm.
what He tells us makes no sense. For me, my understanding of what God is twofold. There is the one that is limited to, the scientifical, the universe, the materialistic thing that he came up with. But when it comes to morality and so on, I have to limit myself to what he revealed in the revelation, and what he kind of if you want, the innate knowledge of good and bad that we have within us. But anything beyond that, I will have to acknowledge that just beyond me.
Well, I'll give
I
you no. I'm
yeah,
not
sorry.
frustrated by your answer, by the way. It's interesting because I'm comparing it to how I think. Like I said earlier, I want to talk about how I would think if Allah showed up in front of me, right? If there is absolute proof that this is Allah and my mind works in all the other ways the same as it does right now, would I obey Allah? Of course. Right. Of course I will because I know the consequences and that's honestly in my mind that is proof that I'm not in deep denial or something. If there's actual like if I genuinely believe or I'm certain that Allah exists, then I will obey because I know the consequences. But does that mean I will love him? I don't think so. Like it's and that is out of my control and that's not, as soon as I say that, I'm already thinking of a bunch of the people who are more toxic about this kind of conversation. They'd be like, "See, that is the arrogance that Allah talks about. That is the kibriya. That is the you think you are better than the creator of the universe." That is not what I'm thinking. I would understand, I would acknowledge, okay, you created me, you understand everything in the universe. You are way better than me. That's not a question. I still don't understand how I'm supposed to love you. Like that is and that's a thing that he created me with. And that
But
is my problem here. Like
mm,
if God demonstrated himself in front of me, and you made a very good point. You said you would be a better Muslim, and part of it is because like or maybe I was projecting this, but part of why I would be a good Muslim at that point is because I want to meet him and ask him more questions. Is
yeah,
because
yeah,
I
that's
want to
also my case. Yeah,
yeah,
that's also my case.
yeah, I picked up on that. I still have a lot more questions, and some of these questions make me not able to love him. Not out of malice, but more like I just can't understand what I would perceive as pettiness and oddity. And at the core of it, I think more highly of that being, that Allah character, the creator, the biggest thing outside of the universe. I
Yeah,
think more highly of it than
then
for it to
Muslim is
have the
better.
characteristic of punishing an insignificant thing for the crime of disbelief.
Yeah, but I think you really have to appreciate the as I was telling you before, you think for yourself, and that's it's in I mean it honors you in a sense to say that you know what, I'm not moving from for the petty thing, as you mentioned it.
Mm.
That is something that I kind of like I'm not at ease with it, but that's good because it might be because you are the type of people that type of person, sorry, that moves more, like with regard to reward and inspiration and so on, and don't really like to the fear. And but some people, again, I'm telling you this, even for me, the hell might not be a pleasant concept, and it's not supposed to be. Some people might be saved from hell because hell exists, in a sense, meaning that the threat of hell might be what keeps them on the path. Some people will be really very much inspired by heaven or by meeting God. Some people, and each and every single of the engine that people work with is used by Islam. That's the answer that I think, to me at least, it answers your point about not really liking this idea of hell. It might not be the fear of hell might not be the main engine that you would go for. It has to go with meeting Allah and asking your question. Or it has to be about the inner peace or the fact that you're troubled inside, and you
I
find
mean,
trying to find truth.
even with that, like even if I'm not scared of hell, even if I know, okay, I know the rules, I know how to get to heaven, and I'm not going to be scared of hell. It's just the concept itself. I still don't understand why Allah would apply it at all, and that uncertainty would make me unable to love Him. And the whole like, it's just how my brain is wired. And unless He can give me an answer Himself, or someone can explain it in a way that makes sense to me, it's just even His mere existence, proof of His existence, doesn't resolve that issue. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, I understand your point. And to be
I
honest,
had
I,
never
al-
thought
I
of that
also
before this
thought
conversation. Like
I,
I
al-
seriously, yeah.
I already thought about that before, quite a long time ago, and I agree with you. I actually went through the same thought process. I mean, I asked myself the same questions. The truth is that my main question, the main answer that I gave, that I reached on this, is that in the end, the our intentions are known by God better than we know our intentions ourselves, right? And if you were to see God in front of you, as I was saying, it's not the end of free will, but it would immediately collapse any type of, you know, uh, arrogance that you might have, or any type of, like errands that your brain might go to. Not saying that you have arrogance, but or
Mhm.
that you are arrogant. I don't think that's the case. And as you said, some toxic people might, project on you a lot of intentions and so on. And I think that's a mistake because that's not even expected of us as Muslims to actually say, oh, this one is, like a murtad or whatever, or this one is a this and that. That is not something that we're supposed to be doing, to point fingers at people. That is a very dangerous thing to do, actually. Now, when it comes to your intentions and what drives you in the end, that what is within your heart, well, God, if He exists, knows it better than you do. And in the end, what made sense for me is that God will judge you exactly on what you are, not what people think you are, not what you claim to be, not what you convince yourself to be or what I convince myself to be. He will judge us if He exists exactly on what we are, and that's enough for me. That should be enough for you too, actually.
You know
Uh,
what's funny? Like it's really funny because I have the same exact conclusion, and that was my last stepping stone out of Islam. Because I was thinking to myself, it's not about like for God, if God's that big, if God's that perfect, if He knows every single thought in my head and He knows why I've arrived at my conclusions, He would not punish me for this. Like He might punish me for my deficiency in, for example, doing something that would hurt someone else, even though I know it would hurt someone else. That's selfishness. I deserve punishment for that. But I feel like He wouldn't punish me for these honest, like reasons to disbelieve, or more like lack of reason to believe, plus the suspicious things, all that. But exactly what you said makes
but
me feel like I have nothing to be worried about.
but that's the thing. So here you go. I mean, there is a verse in the Quran that says, وَمَا نَحْنُ لَمَظْلُومِينَ, we will not oppress, or, like, we will not be unjust, right? We will not be oppressive to people. And, that kind of answers the question. I mean, to me, at least it answers it perfectly, which is the point is that God will be just, more just than you could be, more just than you can imagine. And He will also be merciful to the extent that He wants to be. So that's pretty much all there is to say about this. Now, of the people that are actually unbelievers or people that actually really lost the faith or really doubted to this extent, God knows exactly what path they went through. If there was a hint of this or that within it, then He will know it better maybe than yourself. And no, surely better than yourself. So that's and there is an element of humility to say. I mean, for us Muslims at least, to say that we do not know what's within people's heart, and therefore we should not judge. Now, saying this, what I'm saying about you, I'm not saying that I'm seeing it about a few other people that have channels online that I found in their commentary to be unjust. Meaning by that at some point I'm like, but it's not possible to actually say this and thinking it's true. Meaning that you need to distort the fact to actually go for it. And
I
and
mean, I could tell you from experience, I don't know if I don't think they're intentionally distorting the fact. Maybe you think that I've thought some things through and pushed them out of the way that aren't as good of I don't know if you'd call it an argument, but I've thought something through that is a very obvious flaw to what they're saying. Is that what you're saying? But I don't think they're doing it intentionally to distort the Islam or anything.
I would say,
Like they're
I
convinced that
definitely
whatever you call a
the
distortion is how they saw it.
The only reason that we're speaking now to you that are actually tuned in or that even follow you, that again, as I was saying, I don't feel
Mhm.
that at all. When I hear you speaking, I hear the same question that I spoke with myself, and the point that you're bringing are fair in a sense from someone outside or who has a question that like he was not able to find good answers to, but he tried. And but you have people, that it's a verse again in the Quran that says that by this book some will be guided and so some will be like uh, pushed aside, if you want, in a sense. And the intention is the core element here. If you want to look at the Quran and find flaws within it and find reasons to not believe, for sure you can find them. You will find what your heart wants to find, in a sense. Now, what you're saying is that what you alluding to is that some people might look for guidance and actually err because of Quran. And what I would say to that is that either they are not misinformed, which is, to be honest, to me is a very massive problem even within the Muslim community, or again, as I was saying, they're just looking for flaws because they do not want this message and what it brings. Because it's not only joyful and rainbows and so on. There is harshness to being a Muslim, as in you have to follow a few rules that if you were not Muslim you wouldn't have to follow. You would have to acknowledge the fact that you're a servant to a higher
Wait,
being. When
are you
maybe
speaking from your own experience in the beginning of your questioning?
I mean,
That's what
yeah,
you're
yeah,
talking
but
about? Yeah.
yeah, yeah, but I think that's something that again, as I was saying, I know you dismiss that, but
No, no,
When I looked at
I'm just trying to relate to it. Like that.
yeah,
That
yeah,
was what you mentioned in the beginning,
yeah,
right?
it's a full circle, but the thing is, I really think that that's something that's deeply within the Sirah and the Quran as well. The idea that people will reject something if it doesn't suit them. And even if it's the truth, they will try to hide it. That is something that I'm very much convinced of. That you're not, apparently,
Mhm.
but I am. I have seen it. I see it daily. I see it at work. I see it in life. Like people actually tend to take positions. If we're honest with ourselves, if we remove all interests from the decision, we might have taken a different decision. But because we have interest, because we don't have to renounce to some element of our own identity or our comfort or our position or whatever, we might be tempted to push aside something that might have some truth, but we don't want to hear. And that's a very, very important message to understand. If you
We're
and I'm
definitely
saying,
gonna dedicate a whole stream to that one alone. I
yeah, maybe
know
at
that,
some
yeah,
point.
because I still have a lot to say about that, and I know I understand where you're coming from, but I still want to make sure that we have explored every tangent from there
I
because,
think that
yeah,
I think that we've been speaking for like
yeah.
very too long. And
I
to be
want to
honest, I'm sorry.
apologize.
I'm
There are
sorry.
people who like were
Yeah,
in the waiting room and they left. I'm really sorry.
I'm sorry.
Um, but
Uh,
this was very interesting, and that's why I didn't want it to end. And I still have like there are some I still have questions that I'm just leaving aside from now, and there are some comments like start comments that I'll ask you before we wrap up. And one thing I want to make clear, so I understand where you're coming from when it comes to, like, for example, you can't not each human can't judge, and we don't even know how many actual disbelievers there are, as described in the Quran and so on. But the thing for me about perfection, which is Islam, is that if you find one issue with it
one
or
flaw.
one specific
Yeah,
case, right, then that's the whole thing.
of
So
course.
that's why I'm asking about specific cases, like say someone does follow all the morality of Islam except for this and so on, because I'm trying to isolate it to the core idea itself, right?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so
But
that's
that's a
why
very
I
sane.
approach it that
To
way.
me, it's a very sane, rational endeavor. I think that's really the endeavor that we're supposed to take as Muslims anyway. Maybe the point where we differ is that I I acknowledge something, which is that the reason why God created us in that way and maybe not created us like angels. I don't know the answer. I just know that He decided to be so, and that with it came uh, a few elements like disbelieving is the worst crime ever, and this is something that I accept. While you went a bit further, like, yeah, but why make this? And I understand that question, but I also understand that this is way beyond my reach, and this is where we differ, I think.
Okay, yeah, I yeah, I think we differ in a bunch of places, but that's one of
Yeah,
them.
yeah, that's one of
Yeah,
them. Sorry,
yeah.
sorry.
We're
In that particular point, I mean.
Yeah, no, no, I'm with you. I'm with you. I'm not like correcting you or anything. Um, and for me, I understand that there are things beyond my grasp, but sometimes the simplest answer makes dismissing those things or leaving them aside, like it makes more sense, a lot more sense. So
Yeah, but okay,
yeah, leaving those things aside means that there's a prerequisite of believing in the rest, and that was what makes you leave those things aside.
but I don't agree with, and I don't agree there.
Yeah,
I think that believing in Islam, I believe in Islam not for those things that I couldn't demonstrate, but for all the things that I could demonstrate.
yeah,
In
and
your
we're gonna
case,
get to like the things that you can demonstrate.
mm,
We're gonna talk about those because I mean, in theory, once you've accepted those things and you have a strong enough faith and belief and reasoning and so on, then it could make sense that you would leave aside the rest. But as long as you still don't see that, then there's no reason to make that larger leap for the things that we don't know.
absolutely, yeah, that's
Yeah.
exactly my point. My point is that I went through every single thing that could make sense to me, and there are very few things that I couldn't that are beyond. Like again, the reason for us for the creation to be made with for our creation to come with free will, and the fact that God chose not to actually like appear physically in front of each one of us when we were 10 years old to say, "Look, I'm real." These things, they're choices that God made that I'm not questioning, as in, but He should or He could have made it otherwise. Why didn't He? The same as
Hmm.
saying that I've got two hands and not four. Is not that's how it is, and I am moving with this. Now, for all the other things that are within my grasp, then these are I've questions I've questioned a lot, and I'm more than happy to actually discuss. I mean, within my limited knowledge, right?
Hmm.
I'm not a scholar. Again, I'm
And
just
neither
like
am I. Yeah.
yeah, 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 just like doing going
Yeah.
to work, like playing with my
You know what's
children.
the best thing about these conversations is that So when you have one of us being a scholar or a dawah person or whatever it may be, or an expert, so-called expert, it's about like proving the other person wrong. It's about
Mm,
proving that you know more, and and the people in the audience usually can't follow along because they're just trusting that this person knows what they're talking about and this
mm.
person, right, is citing the correct thing, and they're just watching a boxing game basically. And the thing about bringing it to the masses where people can use regular words, right, and talk about these concepts without having to fall back on a degree. So I like that a lot.
Yeah, to be honest, that's my level, so I have to like it. uh, but
No.
yeah, I agree with you that sometimes when the conversation gets too theological or like too complex, some people might be lost. Now, of course, it reduces the reach that I can explain things because my knowledge is so limited that But my point is that my knowledge was enough for me, and
Mhm,
some people might require less knowledge, and some people might require more knowledge. And the thing is, it's like being a doctor. Everyone would be able to heal himself, but not everyone sorry, everyone would like to be able to heal himself, but not everyone is ready to go through the 15 years of studies, right? So at my level, I knew that I couldn't go through like the degrees, and that's not the course, the journey that I went on, but I needed at least enough element to put myself at ease or to respond to the questions that I had. And as long as you are able to satisfy in a satisfying way respond to the questions you have, I think you're fine. Now of course the reach of what I say is limited, and to your audience I say, I'm not claiming to have all the answers, because I just have the answers that convince me. Basically, that's my point.
mhm,
And I've gone through this in a very very rational way, not in a dogmatic way. Although I had to educate myself to do this, because it is very easy and comforting to stick to your dogma and just be like, oh, I've got the truth. But this is not what matters. What matters to me is definitely the truth with a big T, meaning that wherever it will lead me, I will go, and I will be at least trying to be as honest as I can,
mhm,
basically. That's and again, as I was saying, the only reason why we speak is that to me, Aladdin, I feel something similar in the way you moved, although we get to different conclusions,
mhm.
and that's why it's interesting. I've never interacted with any other, like a person before, because that's just not my game. Basically, it's not what I'm about. But conversations with people that have different perspectives uh, are always so interesting. They make you grow.
Mhm.
That's how I grew. As I was saying, when I read the various philosophers that I read, none of them share my background, and it was so enlightening to actually see how they think. And a great thing was uh, um, um, they gave me points of convergence that I found fascinating. As to the nature of God, how we got there, the nature of morality.
Oh, I wrote
Um,
that down because I need to do a lot more studies, and then we're going to talk about that point of conversion at some point, because
yeah,
I
yeah,
am
oh man,
curious, like
there are so
where
many.
you think they converged. Um,
There are too many. Honestly,
yeah,
it's insane. I would say to me it's a point of wonder. I
yeah.
wonder, like with their O, like I'm really impressed by so many things. And in the same way that some atheists are impressed with the technicalities of nature, as you look at I'm also impressed by it, of course, but I'm more impressed by it because I see meaning in it. But you can also just be impressed by the technicality of it, like the complexity of the cell and so on. This is enough to be amazed, or looking at the sky. We can be you can be impressed by things that bring you back to your nature, like the beauty of the sky, going outside and looking at a tree. This is something that can inspire you. And for me, another thing that really inspired me was seeing the convergence of all these humans beings that come from different background than mine, and yet their quest put them on the same journey as mine. And I find that really deep,
Poetic.
really beautiful. Yeah, poetic. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's it. Yeah.
yeah. Well, I wanted to say something. First of all, I want to commend you for sitting through my blasphemy in my videos. So I don't know if you noticed, but like when I'm talking to you or anyone else, I'm not trying to piss you off. Like I'm not trying to say Muhammad did this and that. But in my videos, I'm still not trying to piss people off. But I will make jokes that I think are, fit the narrative or whatever it may be. And I know you probably don't like them or you're not supposed to like them as a Muslim. But I commend you for actually like putting that aside and having the conversation with me. So thank you for doing that. Um,
On this, if you allow me to interject something,
mhm,
yes, of course, there are some jokes that you make here and there that I do find in a sense distasteful, but to me it's also because you don't have the same vision as I have. If you saw the scene the same way I would, you wouldn't do them, and they're kind of coherent with what you do. But in that sense, I would say that, and that's really that's kind of sad to me. The fact is that your behavior is more Islamic-like, if you allow me that word, meaning that you're more aligned with the values that we're supposed to have as Muslim, being tolerant, being calm, not wanting to harm people, not coming from a place of arrogance, coming from a place of actually being benevolent, like being wanting to be good and so on. This is things that we have to emulate us as Muslims, and a lot of us we don't. That is the truth. A lot of people, and even worse in the comments, like that is the one place you
Mhm.
should never go, is that people are really rude. So I do post, I've posted a few times under, but I often don't come back to read because I find the answers to be sometimes very angry. And
Even the chats here, which I want to address afterwards, like some of the people in the chat are still not understanding the point of the chat here, like our conversation. They're just trying to. They're still angry for some reason.
uh,
But I want to tell you something though. I
if you allow me to respond to
Yeah.
this, I think that people, I mean, I can understand that to some people, I maybe I sound like a degenerate monkey. I don't know. To some people, what I say makes sense to me, and I think that I've thought this through, and the minds that I've followed to get this to this point are the biggest mind you could think of. Again, like if you read Pascal, if you read Descartes, if you read Spinoza, if you read any of these people, you will get to a sense of what morality is, of what God is, that is much deeper than you think. And these people, you don't realize, or even Pascal, if you say this one was a very convinced Christian, and I'm pretty sure that if you're an atheist, if you read his writings, you would think that this guy is stupid as hell, but that guy is smarter than you might think. Or even if you take Newton, or these people, I mean, do not make the mistake of thinking that believing is being stupid. Do not make the mistake of thinking that acknowledging that you have limits and that's beyond what's beyond your limits, you just accept as is also a mark of stupidity, of dogmatism. You can find dogmatism in atheism and in believers. You can find
Mhm.
intelligence in atheism and believers. I would say that you have to kind of look to yourself, and I think that's what I do, and it seems like that's what you do too. You just try
I
to be
try.
a better person as a whole, like and
Mhm.
sorry if I make some point that might seem silly to you. I'm happy to like address them further if you want, but just like
Mhm.
be more humble, I guess. And that's
Mhm.
also what I say to myself. I'm not preaching here. That's
Mhm.
also something that I have to work on myself.
Well, I
Yeah.
want to say something though. I got to push back on one thing. I'll say a couple of things and then we'll go to the bookmarked comments and then I will wrap it up there. But we're not done yet, people. Uh, I wanted to say you cannot take credit for things like, or Islam should not take credit for things like you said something like the way that I think or behave is very Islamic, and because you see a lot of these good values, right? That
Uh,
whatever values you were listing.
but I'm not saying
Mhm.
that you do this because of Islam. I'm
Yeah,
just
no,
saying
no,
that they are very much in line with it. Mm.
no, I understand your point. I just wanted to point out that because of your interpretation of Islam, because of how you are as a person, you find these values in Islam and you believe that this is the Islamic way, or at least that's how I see it from here, you know?
Mm.
So when someone says, like, there's a saying in Arabic, Muslimuna bila Islam, or something like, or Islam bila Muslimun, like, you see Islam in this place without Muslims, you see goodness, you see order, and I always found that weird because those people are maybe they're following the same things, but Islam has a lot of other things that could go against the same values. But it seems a little selective to me. You know what I mean? So
I understand. I understand
yeah,
what you think, but I so deeply disagree, and I'm very much. But we can
that's
discuss that
fine. Yeah,
some other point.
yeah. And sometimes I just have to get my thought out so people don't think that I like agreed with a past
Yeah, yeah,
point
yeah,
or
of course. Okay,
something.
so sorry. I
Yeah.
understand you. That's
No,
okay.
no,
Yeah,
no,
sure.
no, I'm with you. And what else? Yeah, there's some people in the comments thinking that I'm frustrated. So there are conversations before that I've had, and I hope you didn't watch some of them because some of them are just brain frying, where the other person's just trying to shout at me, "You have no like reason to live. You don't believe in God, and so on and so forth." And that is where I have to exercise patience, and I still have to do the same thing of trying to understand where they're coming from, but also being patient. But in this case, it wasn't any of that. If I'm ever frustrated here, if it may seem that way, it's just that I am frustrated that I'm not following up on every thought I had. It has nothing to do with you or how you're behaving. If anything, it's just a testament to how the conversation keeps going in different directions and not in a bad way. It's more that there's a lot of things to talk about, right? And every time you give me an answer, there's two questions that I have,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
they can go in separate directions.
That's the nature of things. I mean,
Yeah.
we're talking about subjects that have so many ramifications that I think a lot of them I haven't really explored to the full extent. I've just gone as far as I needed to actually,
Hmm.
put myself at ease, as I was saying. And for you, if you go further than me, maybe you'll have questions that I never asked myself, and some other
And
parts
vice
have.
versa. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So to your audience, I would say that if they think that you're frustrated, it might be because they are frustrated to my answers, which
Hmm.
I acknowledge. For sure, there is no way that my answer will actually convince. I'm not expecting to convince. Actually, I'm just trying to explain my vision, and I think that you could, as they say, and there is a saying that says it's very difficult to convince someone intelligent. It's almost impossible to convince someone stupid. I'm not calling anyone stupid, but what I mean by that is that if
Yeah.
you're not ready to hear something, it will always sound like gibberish to you, however simple it might be. And to me, what I'm saying is seems simple. If it seems really gibberish or stupid to you, well, I cannot say that it is stupid because to me it makes sense,
Hmm.
but it just means that our minds work in such different manner that they just go
Yeah.
across.
And I'm okay with that. Like I'm okay with
Yeah,
at the end of the day, even if I don't quite understand how you arrived at that conclusion, like you verbalized it, and I hear you, but I still don't quite get it. That's still fine. At
yeah,
least
yeah,
we got a shot at it, you know.
yeah, yeah.
And what else was I gonna say? Um, Huh. I can't even read my own handwriting. Yeah. So, one more thing. People would keep asking me questions, and one of them that I'm going to bring up questions about other things in Islam that would go against something that you just said, or or this one, like speak of the devil. It says, please ask how irrational the stories of the Quran and Hadith are, like Noon, uh, Juj wa Majuj, and do they make sense? Thanks. Thank you for the super chat. But what I wanted to mention about that is for the topic of this stream, I don't like to go on these tangents very much. And especially when it comes to, again, thanks, Nozone, for the super chat, but this is how I want to address it today. Like, let me show you another one that's about the same thing here. If Islam can be logically, intellectually justified, why the need for apostasy or blasphemy law? Or do you have a differing view? Something like this. I have confidence, right? And there's a lot of problematic things in Islam that have to do with women, that have to do with slavery, that have to do with these laws. I have the confidence that based on our conversation, I'm pretty sure your position on them, at least for the time being for today, is reasonable in terms of like the harm that you would be causing with your opinion is minimal, if anything at all. So I don't see the need to go on these tangents at the moment. It could be interesting to still get your perspective, but that's not the point of this conversation. That's what I wanted to say. Yeah, like
Uh,
because people always seem to think that, for example, you think it's a crime against God to disbelieve, right? Some people would take that and move to another conclusion, which is therefore, anything goes against criminals. Therefore, it's good to take measures to stop people from becoming criminals and spreading that corruption and so on. I have confidence that that's not where you're going with it in your mind.
well, of course, if I knew where you lived, no, I'm kidding. Uh, Look, man, I mean that is. I understand why people are asking these questions, but to me, it's really weird because I didn't grow up. I grew up in a traditional Sunni family. Again, traditional meaning we actually take the religion seriously, and we never the view that I grew up with, and even of like the sheikhs that we actually listened to, wasn't that blasphemy was actually punishable by death. The case where blasphemy was actually punishable when it was a matter of state, meaning that people would reject Islam and go to the other side and
Mhm,
fight and spy. And that's the cases that I know of, because I know of
mhm,
cases where people were actually just rejecting Islam and just move on. Like, oh, you know what? I'm not with you guys anymore. I'm moving back to Mecca. Like that. If blasphemy in and of itself was immediately punishable by death, then no one would have left, sorry, Medina to go back to Mecca, or like people would have been like slaughtered left and right, because a lot of people left
mhm.
Islam right after the death of the Prophet, as far as
Yeah,
I know. Now, I'm not saying that this is the
yeah.
ultimate knowledge, and I know that there is of the different madhabs, there are a few that saw thoughts that like blasphemy in and of itself is immediately punishable by death. That is definitely not the understanding that I have. There is never the understanding that I had before. To be honest, I've never had this understanding, which is why it's only when I started to look at this whole new dawah scene that I heard of this opinion being voiced in that way. And I know that the madhabs have had different visions at different times, but again, these are just people's endeavors, Muslims' endeavors. However, let's say highly ranked they are within the scholars of Islam, it's just humans' opinion. So to me, no, I don't hold this belief at all. To me,
Mhm. Well,
blasphemy.
thanks
I
for
mean,
clarifying. It's
yeah,
not what you hold. Yeah.
sorry. Yeah,
Um,
yeah, no.
no.
And but the Quran is kind of, I mean, there it's based on the Hadith. The Quran is kind of is based on the Hadith on a very specific context, the way I understand it. And the Quran says that lakum dinukum waliyadin, or فَمَنْ شَاءَ فَلْيُؤْمِنْ وَمَنْ شَاءَ فَلْيَكْفُرْ. You know
Mhm.
this better than me, which means to you your faith and to me mine. Or
Yeah.
whoever wants to believe believes, whoever wants to disbelieve disbelieves. And
Well, I just have to
this is
make it
clear
clear.
cut. But
I
you
have a
don't.
lot of discussion and disagreement there, but the point still stands. You don't believe that it applies to the people where this would actually matter to, and I think that's part of the question that people are asking. What does he think? They want to get your views on this, so it's a valid question. But I was trying to
Of
remind
course, of
them
course.
that, like when it comes up, sometimes it's not the context that we're talking about. Sometimes it's not as important at the moment. So, like this person is asking, is saying, Coco Jasmine is saying, those kinds of questions are important. Undermining them like that is just sad. I'm not trying to undermine them, or I believe everyone here is interested in knowing his views. I'm sure they are. It's just that when the conversation's going in a very different direction, sometimes it's not the time for it. And sometimes the intention is kind of a trap. It's more like, okay, so how come this and how come that? And even though I disagree with your assessment of, for example, apostasy laws and so on, I'm glad you have the conclusion you have. And it's not worth right now exploring at this moment. That's what I'm saying. But yeah, so thank you for giving that answer as well.
No problem.
I'm gonna go through a few of the comments that I had pinned about about this chat, and then we're gonna wrap it up. Let's see. So Zargos was saying in the beginning, I think the default logic should be how, not why. Now it's a little hard to remember which part of the conversation it was, but
Yeah.
I don't know if I agree with that. It could be both. Like I don't know if that's really a definitive.
Yeah, the answer different questions. So the how
Yeah,
and the why. The default logic should be how. No, that I don't agree with that. That is
yeah.
very far from the question. I mean,
It's the
if I
opposite.
might just say one, I would say that, I mean, that's my view.
Mm,
But I'd say that what separates us from, I cannot prove this, right? What separates us to me from the rest of, creatures on Earth is that we ask why. The why is really the question that has kind of leveled us above all the other animals on Earth. Like the why, the reason we looked at the stars, the reason we try to understand, like to manipulate our environment. All of this was in the quest for understanding, right? So the why is much more important than the how, which I think is more technical based level, and not everyone will get to the how kind of technicalities, but the why is at the reach of everyone. Everyone can have this question. The how is sometimes too difficult.
yeah, it really depends on the context, but I think
Yeah,
at the core of it, it's why is bigger than how. Like when I was younger, at least I remember,
yeah, I agree.
that's what kids ask. Why?
Yeah,
They
yeah.
don't
Why?
ask
Not how.
how does the
Yeah,
sky rain. It's more like why does the sky rain?
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
because
it's
the
not.
how is sometimes just technicalities.
Yeah,
The how it could be done this way or that way. The main reason, and that's
mm,
also, I mean, Zagros, that's also the question that you ask people around you, like, why did you do this, or how? Why did you do this? You never ask like how. Like that's not the point. That's he made it with the right hand or left hand. Doesn't matter. He did this. Why? The
mhm,
intention, basically.
yeah. This one's in French, and I believe it means, do you think that being a Muslim allows you to solve your Franco-Moroccan identity crisis? Do you have a Franco-Moroccan identity crisis?
Hey,
Is that
you
backhanded?
made it very clear. No, I don't think that is backhanded.
Okay.
But I think that that's a genuine question from Erdogan, and actually translated well. I don't know. Yeah, do
Mhm.
you think that being a Muslim allows you to solve the Franco-Moroccan identity crisis? No, because I don't have any.
Mm.
I'm getting close to 40. So if I still had that type of crisis, that would be very bad for me, I think.
A
But
little late for that.
yeah, a little late, yeah. But when
Yeah.
I was 15, 12, 10, and I had this household that was more Moroccan inspired and my overall surroundings that were French, I did have to ask myself, like, what am I? But very soon I understand that this doesn't matter. I'm a human being before anything else, same as you guys. And whether my roots are French or Moroccan doesn't don't matter. I mean, I take the best of both, and I take even the best of any other culture or any other thing that I come across. So I don't have that type of crisis. But I do think that people that stay stuck at this level will be struggling more than I am, because this is not a level that will help you grow. If you have a problem because you don't know if you're French or Moroccan, then maybe you're not asking yourself the right questions. At the roots, you're just a human being, and don't bother with this. I mean, I didn't bother myself with this, to be honest.
Okay. Veiled Rose is saying, if you have two people in front of you, one person is Muslim, prays, fasts, and beats his wife. The second is ex-Muslim, finds cure to cancer, saves lives. Which one is good by Quran? I think that was at the time we were talking about morality and so on. Can you give a brief answer to that? I know there's never a
um,
brief answer to that, but you know,
Look, I mean, what which one is good by Quran? Like, you mean in the
I
eyes
mean,
of
I
God?
think they mean by Islam's standards of morality.
Both of them have goods and bad things in them. Again, I mean, trying to essentialize people that way, it's that's not gonna do anyone good. Meaning that, if I mean, we have the example of Muslims that, they believe in God, but they are horrible people beside that, and God will take this into account. So God will not say, "Oh, these people are good," and that's it. That is not what Islam tells us God will do. God says that He will judge us, and if we oppress people, we will be judged for the oppression we make.
But here's
And
the thing, though, like one of those two people will even get a shot at being judged. The other one, well, like they will be judged, but the ultimate like takedown is that they don't believe in God or they're not obeying God. So that just, deletes everything else, right?
but if you're saying that the ex-Muslim is actually what I called a
What
kuffar,
you call
meaning
a
someone
kafir,
that,
yeah.
yeah, exactly. If that exactly what I mean, then
Let's
the
presume
one
that,
that,
yeah.
yeah, okay, so if that one finds cure to cancer and saves life, yeah, he commits nevertheless the worst offense of them all. So that would make him a bad person, definitely. Is he all bad? Then God knows.
Mhm.
Um, as for the other one, but again, I mean, to veil the rose, I say no one is perfectly good and no one is perfectly bad. What is expected from us as Muslims is only to try to be better every day. And to be honest, that's pretty much what is expected from each and every one of us in our different walks of life. So I would say that none of them are good, or both of them are hopefully trying to be better, and who knows how God would judge them. But yeah, the offense of not believing in God is definitely the worst that can be made. So
All right. Well, I gotta say, if it wasn't you, if it was someone else, people have to worry about that kind of conclusion because what's the next point from that? Because people are flawed, as Muslims always say. There's no one perfect except for Allah. So it's a very easy launching point to bad conclusions and bad like follow up thoughts. If
yeah,
if
but
the concept is that a disbeliever is an arrogant, and some people make that determination that I know this person is a disbeliever, then it makes it very legal and very okay to think a lot of things that may not necessarily be halal or haram in Islam. They could be a gray area, and people take the liberty to do that. And
yeah,
that's why a
but
lot of people oppose the whole moral argument of God being the disobeying God being the worst sin.
yeah, and I understand that logic, but that's not the one that I've come to,
Mm,
basically. But
yeah.
I've thought about this path as well, but I just found them not satisfying for different reasons that we can talk at some other points. But mine really made sense to me, and that's why I'm still, even though maybe didn't make sense to everyone, but I think that I managed to articulate it in a way that goes from A to Z at least, even if the path is not the one that everyone would have gone through.
Mm. Yeah, I'm as much as I disagree with you, I am glad you gave an answer. Um, and then, yeah, just a couple of stickers. Thank you to P. Bear and Aladdin. And I did that to myself, apparently. And Nazone75. Thank you for very much, guys, for the support. And a couple more questions. Um, why not extend this logic to Muslims? Many Muslims don't want to deny the invalidity of Islam because of the consequences of leaving, or the power it gives them over others like men or women. So that's when you were talking about people believing what they believe because it benefits them. So could that logic be applied the other way around? There are a lot of Muslims
So
who don't want to leave Islam because it benefits them, and because they don't want to. have to face the consequences or face the scary reality of it.
Well, but if the point is that the reasons why they believe kind of belongs to each and every single one of them, meaning that if you obey and you believe and you obey to God, whether it's out of fear or out of hope or out of again pure like feeling like happy or like at peace. I mean, it's up to you. There's no. I wouldn't say that there is a reason that is better than the other. In the end, and again, I will quote here: the best of us as Muslims, is just the one that has the most piety. It's not the one that does the most good deed or the one that has the best reason or whatever. It's just the one that puts his heart in the best place to get closer to God and tries to better himself. That's how we're supposed to move. Now, the question is, if someone sticks within Islam for power reasons, then if there is no belief within it, if it's just about it's an opportunity for me to get to power and to hold it, then I mean that's kind of a hypocrite move, I would say, because then if he pretends to believe just so that he can stay in position of power, then that's just manipulation, and I think that's worse than anything, because I mean, if that guy is acting on a hypocritical or pure selfish reason, then he might not make the best decision for anyone around him. So that's not great.
Mhm.
But to be honest,
Here's
I
the
mean,
thing
that's
about this comment,
controversial.
though. If I were talking to someone, which is most Muslims, would claim that someone who says they don't believe in Islam, they either like haven't come across the right explanation and so on and so forth, or they know the truth and they're denying it. Right? You say that that faction is like we can never know how many
Yeah,
people, but a
yeah,
lot of people would make that assertion, like yes, that is how you are, for example. And in that case, this answer would be kind of a rebuttal, like, okay, how about I say that about you? But because you said that that doesn't apply to everyone, I guess the answer is that doesn't apply to everyone. It could apply to some people. So
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. That's exactly the point. I
Yeah.
mean, it can apply to. I mean, on both sides, quote unquote believers and quote unquote unbelievers, meaning people that appear as such. Who knows who is really what behind, right? And I'm never going to claim that there's that many unbelievers and here they are, and there are that many believers and here they are. I think that at the end of the day, what brings me peace is that God knows that, and it's good because He's the only one who's supposed to judge in between us. And I do not doubt that some Muslims are ill intentioned. Apologize for my
Mm,
accent. It's getting late.
that's right.
I mean, it's not bad. It's not good before, but it's getting worse.
No, you're
But
doing fine.
but the point is, to me at least, uh, intention, including the intentions of Muslims that try to get power over non-Muslims or over weaker Muslims or over the dhimmis or whatever, they will all be judged for what they did. And same as me, I've done wrong before in my life. Of course, I've repented, which is the only thing that I could do after the fact. And I do hope that, I'm forgiven. That's a promise within Islam that, if you repent with sincerity and so on, then, you're just going to move on fine. Uh, so that's all I can say is that, whether you're Muslim or not, you will be judged for your act. And I think that there is a verse as well that says that God does not forget or lose any of the good deeds of anyone. Anyone meaning Muslim or not. Um, and it's the same for the bad deeds, right? So, I mean, in the end, justice will come. And again, remember that what Islam claims, at least that's internally very consistent, is that no one on Judgment Day will actually complain about injustice. That's
Mhm.
the one thing that, kind of, I mean, to me, it solves a lot of the questions that people might sometimes ask themselves.
And I want to clarify something. Someone's saying the question hasn't been addressed. It's not about people using Islam for personal gains. It's more about the cognitive bias. And
Oh, okay.
I think
Sorry, I
this
didn't understand that.
we'll be talking about this
The
topic again.
cognitive bias. Okay.
um we're going to get into this again because I have thoughts about like I understand why it makes sense to you, the idea that not all disbelievers are disbelievers the way that we understand and so on. I would say it's very irresponsible and unlikely that God would just make it that vague. Like you are more specific than Allah in that description, and I would expect better from Allah, but that's a whole other discussion that I don't want to get us into right now. But I just wanted to make it clear, like I'm not done with that that discussion, and we're gonna get to it at some point.
If you allow me, just I would say that nonetheless I do disagree with what you said, because to me the word kafara, kuffar, bears a lot of meaning. I mean, actually it bears all the meaning that I gave, which is just people that intentionally
Well, then
covet
that
it, you
would
know.
mean that like the messenger or the book or the way that God phrased it isn't good enough because most Muslims still don't understand that definition. That's the imperfection here that I would hold against Allah.
But that's like saying that if but that okay, I understood your point, but that's
Yeah,
putting perfection in a different way. To me, Islam is perfect in the sense that it's as perfect as it can be, based on how God created us, how God wanted to
but
create
I
us.
can make some improvements to the Quran that would make it even clearer. Like without even getting into tafsir and whatnot, I would just add one word or two words in a specific point, and I'm like, now everyone understands without a shadow of a doubt what Allah meant. And that I find is an imperfection. But I
I
know you're
understand.
gonna have something like you're
Yeah.
gonna have some thoughts about that. So yeah, we'll get to that another time. The last thing is the higher evolutionary. Thank you very much. They're saying this has been a great discussion. I agree. I feel
So
bad
wait,
for.
so do I
Yeah,
get $7.5 of this 15?
I'll send them sadaqah in your name, sadaqah jariyah. There you go.
Mashallah. Okay,
Yeah,
thank you for that. That's awesome.
yeah. Now, I gotta say, to be
I'm glad.
honest, I'm so glad. Like people have been supporting me here, and trust me, it doesn't pay well at all. But I really appreciate anything they support me with, and it's made me. You know what? Someone had asked me this question, and both the support of the people and my answer to this question made me like more try to donate more these days. So I remember someone asked me, "What is something you like about Islam?" Like Islam, some people think once you've left Islam, oh, it all sucks. Everything in Islam sucks. Not really. But one concept that I like was
Zakat.
zakah, right?
Mm,
Like it's
of course.
2.5% of your stagnant money per year. No one's really like taking the money from you. You don't have to send it to a specific church, like the central church or something. I like that concept. However, there are some things like you can't give zakat to a non-Muslim. Like there's some rules that I don't exactly like. And then I was thinking to myself, well, now that there's no religion telling me to do it, why am I like I could still do it, right? So I just want to remind people in the comments, make sure to give zakat or just charity to causes that actually matter as well.
Mm.
So just a quick reminder. Yeah.
If you allow me, just 2 points here.
Mhm.
First, I want to remind the people that are not asleep yet uh, that actually most of us Muslims, we don't focus so much on the outward world, meaning that we're not here discussing with people outside of the faith all day. Faith is mainly about within. So zakah, prayer, like fasting, trying to be a better person, trying to, emulate the Prophet in many, many aspects. That is what the religion is about for the vast majority of us. So most of us, we don't address non-believers on a daily basis, and we don't really think of the question that a lot of unbelievers or atheists or like people outside of the faith think. That's the first point. The second point is that just to respond to you, maybe zakat cannot be given to people outside of the faith. To be honest, I didn't know that. I never looked into this. But for sure, we are as Muslims encouraged to help people in need even outside of the faith. So
Mhm.
that's something that just I wanted to say. We're not absolutely encouraged by the faith to like let the people that are not Muslims, in their pain or whatever. As human beings, we have. I mean, it's just a term. It's the logic of concentric, like circles that are, first your family, then your community, then the neighbors, then the rest of humanity. We're supposed to help and to be helpful to everyone, and that's a reminder to myself as well as to all the Muslims. We're here, we're supposed to be a force for good, right, in the world, although it doesn't show maybe that way sometimes. On a deep level, I think, and to be honest, for the vast majority of Muslims, we do emulate that. And just, yeah, remember that, including with regard to helping others, that's within the culture. And this culture has been inspired by the religion as well. So, sorry, just a side note.
I might have some minor disagreements there, but
Sorry.
no need to apologize. But sometimes I just I nod along sometimes because it's more like I hear you, and part of what you're saying I agree with it, so on. So I just want people to know that there's a lot more that hasn't been spoken about that we will get to at some point.
Inshallah.
Yeah,
God,
inshallah. If you don't
God,
say
God
inshallah, it
willing,
might not happen.
God willing to me.
Yeah, everyone's saying it's been a great conversation. Thank you for making that happen, and thank you,
Pleasure.
non crazy cat lady. Um, it's it's very difficult to like. I've been trying to find guests, and I do have these these streams, and I want to have more of them, but it's not easy to find the right kind of conversation, and especially that people tend to get very emotional in these conversations, and then it turns to prove me wrong, prove you wrong. So I wouldn't have been able to have this conversation without you being here. So thank you for being here.
It was a pleasure. It
Yeah.
was a pleasure.
Thank you for staying up late for this and everyone else who
Yeah,
tuned in.
yeah.
Yeah.
And sorry for everyone else that was supposed to join in that I kind of monopolized the channel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You French, you colonists, you're
Yeah,
always out
exactly.
there.
Yeah, yeah. We just come here, we we drop the flag, and that's it. That's ours now.
Yeah.
So actually, I'll have to claim your channel now. But
For
yeah, no,
Islam or for France?
to be both. Let's make it both so that we can scare a bit of the candidates we
Yeah.
have here because it's not going it's not going very well for us over here.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it
Yeah.
was a pleasure, of course, to speak with you. And again, I mean, the kind of in the same spirit that I've seen in the previous video. So yeah, that's good. I mean, I can only hope that you keep on moving forward, and hopefully, and to be very clear, as a Muslim, I do believe that is the truth, and of course, I would want all people to join Islam and to realize that it is. Um, but God has different plans for everyone, and all I can do is try to show that that's how I understand Islam. I think that I've read enough to like just talk out of my like just invent things. I Everything that I've said is things that I either have come across through reading philosophers or through reading actual uh, Islamic sources, primary sources. So um, I can assure you that what I said is very much not only something that I made up, but really a very, very important position within Islam. So yeah, hopefully it gives a different perspective, and of course, happy to have another follow-up conversation at some point.
Yeah. I believe you. I believe that everything you've mentioned, you have found basis for in Islam. And I believe that you hold it with the best of intentions. And as always, there's always going to be a tiny bit of disagreement, which is like, or
Which is part of
clarification.
it. Yeah, yeah, of
Yeah,
course.
that there's always like other conclusions to make using the same source material, but I don't have to like hold that against you.
Mm.
All I can say is that you have arrived to these conclusions using this source material honestly. So,
That's
that's
it.
all we could say about that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. All right.
Well,
Well, thank you very much again for
pleasure.
joining, and
Yeah, pleasure,
I'll
mine.
talk to you another time.
Yeah, with pleasure, my friend. Take care of
Yeah.
yourself.
Take care.
Bye bye.
Bye bye. So yeah, again, thank you everyone for this stream. It was very good. The comments were a little bit mixed, but most of them were very good comments. I appreciate you joining, and again, please give the stream a like. I don't like begging for this stuff, but it does help with the algorithm, and it helps people see this kind of video. So if you want to see more like this, then subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications and so on, so you don't miss any one of these. And I'll try to do them more like regularly. And yeah, thank you everyone for your support and your time. And I'll talk to you later. As always, think critically and think for yourself.